Chapter 1306. Yi Ximing's face darkened. She knew this person from Dao Yi, but this person had disappeared tens of thousands of years ago. Why would she appear here and cook soup? She knew it was because of Yi Xian without a second thought. Other than the unluckiest person in the world, who else could make a person who had disappeared for tens of thousands of years come here to cook soup? This Yi Xian is poisonous. At the start she thought that following Yi Xian would bring disaster to Yi Xian. But now it seems that she was gravely mistaken. Damn it! Following him would only bring about a huge disaster for me. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly tugged on Yi Ximing's sleeve and said softly, "Ximing, this is Meng Pa, right?" Yi Ximing glared at Yi Xian. "What do you think?" Yi Xian said solemnly, "She appeared for me?" Yi Ximing said solemnly, "At least you have some self-awareness. Someone wants you dead." Yi Xian frowned. "What do you mean?" Yi Ximing sighed. "Look around you." Yi Xian looked around and frowned. "What's wrong?" Yi Ximing pointed his finger at Yi Xian's eyes. "Look again." Yi Xian glanced around. Soon his expression changed. Around him there were some mysterious black threads. These threads were tightly locking the space around him. Unknowingly, the space around him had been sealed by a mysterious power. Yi Xian said solemnly, "What is this?" Yi Ximing looked around and said softly, "The law of the great Tao." Yi Xian frowned. "What do you mean?" Yi Ximing said, "Someone has reconstructed the shattered great Tao. In other words, you are now under the law of the great Tao of the underworld. You have to follow their law. Cross the bridge of helplessness, drink Meng Po's soup and enter the path of reincarnation." Yi Xian frowned. "Ximing, didn't you say that the great Tao has collapsed?" Yi Ximing nodded. "Yes. Many of the laws and order of heaven and earth have disappeared. However, not all the great Tao laws were reversed by someone. Obviously, you've seen a legendary guardian of the great Tao and you're currently under the great Tao laws of the netherworld." Yi Xian looked at Meng Po on the bridge of helplessness. "Meng Po is a great Tao protector?" Yi Ximing nodded. "Yes." Yi Ximing said, "Yi Ximing, Po's Meng Pi Xian." The sound of air rang in the air, but that was it. Po. Yi Xian was a little stunned. The power of the great path laws was a little strange. "Pomo's Yi Men of Tao. Of Pomo's is," Xian, she turned to Yi Xian. "Unless you can break the Tao or reach the Tao validation realm. That's because the great Tao is divided into strong and weak. If you can reach the Tao validation realm, this won't be able to trap you." Yi Xian thought for a moment and was about to activate his bloodline power when Yi Ximing said, "Don't do it yet, let's go take a look." Yi Xian nodded. "That's fine." The two walked towards the bridge of helplessness. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Ximing, who do you think wants to kill me?" Yi Ximing shook his head. "You and I have Mu Xing's help, the underworld probably doesn't know we're here." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Then there are two people left. The first one is the one Qinger is going to deal with. He is also the one who gave me the cause of disaster. However, I don't think he is the one. Other than this person, there's only one left." Yi Ximing said solemnly, "It's her. Her. The woman who put the curse on Manju and Shahua." Yi Xian nodded. "It should be her." Yi Ximing said softly, "The other party's revenge is a little too quick." Yi Xian said, "The other party's main body shouldn't be here." Yi Ximing looked at Yi Xian. "I think I've guessed that woman's background." Yi Xian asked curiously, "What's her background?" Yi Ximing looked into the distance and said softly, "To be able to do this, she must be from that place." Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Yi Xian noticed that the space around him and Yi Ximing was turning illusory. Yi Ximing said solemnly, "Come, let's cross the bridge of helplessness." She led Yi Xian towards the bridge of helplessness. When the two arrived at the bridge, Yi Xian wanted to go to the top layer, but a mysterious force blocked his way. Yi Xian looked at Yi Ximing and Yi Ximing said, "Let's go to the second layer." Yi Xian nodded and led Yi Ximing towards the second level. This time the two of them stepped onto the second level bridge without a hitch. Yi Ximing said, "Half good and half evil." Yi Xian smiled. "Let's go." Half good and half evil. He had guessed it from the start, because his previous sword intent was the good and evil sword intent. But now his sword intent was formless and had reached the sword transformation realm. Therefore he no longer cared about the good and evil Tao. The two of them slowly walked into the distance. Along the way, countless evil spirits and wraiths roared at them from both sides. The faces of these evil spirits and wraiths were ferocious, and they roared hysterically. Some of them even charged towards Yi Xian and Yi Jiming. However, these evil spirits and wraiths couldn't get close to the bridge of helplessness. Yi Xian glanced at the evil spirits and wraiths. Thank goodness he didn't help them. These evil spirits didn't look like good things. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm and the soul-suppressing sword appeared in his hand. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. What are you doing? Yi Xian smiled. Jiming, how many evil spirits and wraiths do you think there are in the river of forgetfulness? Yi Jiming said in a low voice. Countless. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth curled up. The soul-suppressing sword in his hand flew out and disappeared into the river of forgetfulness. Soon, a powerful aura spread out from the river of forgetfulness. Then a black whirlpool appeared not far away from the two of them. Countless evil spirits and wraiths were devoured by the black whirlpool. Yi Jiming took a deep look at the black whirlpool. She knew that when the soul-suppressing sword reappeared, there would be an earth-shattering change. Of course, the prerequisite was that she and Yi Xian were both alive. Yi Xian suddenly said, Jiming. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian with a hint of doubt in his eyes. What are you doing? Yi Xian grinned and took out an item and placed it in Yi Jiming's hand. Yi Xian opened his palm and saw that it was the life-saving stone that Mu Xing had given to Yi Xian. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. If the situation turns bad, you can leave. With this, you can escape. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. What do you mean? Yi Xian shook his head. Nothing. I brought this upon myself. I can't drag you down with me. Yi Jiming suddenly threw the stone at Yi Xian and said angrily, Drag me down? You're telling me that you're afraid of dragging me down? Then what were you doing before? Yi Xian was about to speak when Yi Jiming added, Also, do you think I'm afraid of that woman? Let me tell you, even if she comes in person, she won't be able to kill me. If you have the heart to do that, you'd better worry about yourself. With that, she turned and walked towards Mengpa. Yi Xian tugged on Yi Jiming's sleeve. Are you angry? Yi Jiming shook off Yi Xian's hand, his face expressionless, not saying a word. Yi Xian hesitated. I just don't want to drag you down. Yi Jiming stopped and looked at Yi Xian. You said that you treat me as a friend, right? Yi Jiming stopped and looked at Yi Xian. You said that you treat me as a friend, right? Yi Xian nodded. Yi Jiming sneered. If you really treated me as a friend, you wouldn't have let me leave alone at a time like this. You gave me that stone, so it's obvious that you don't treat me as a friend. I believe that if Missen was here, you definitely wouldn't have let her leave alone, right? Yi Xian fell silent. If Xianxia was here, he definitely wouldn't have let her leave alone, because he knew that she wouldn't have left alone. Thinking of this, Yi Xian suddenly sighed. I'm sorry. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. What are you sorry for? Yi Xian said seriously, You already treat me as a friend. If not for that, you wouldn't have agreed to come to the Nether Realm with me, nor would you have agreed to help save Manju and Xiahua. It's my fault, I was out of my mind and didn't think of this. I always thought that you were only following me to avoid trouble and obtain the scriptures. Yi Jiming sneered. Let me tell you, you're not wrong. I'm following you to avoid trouble and obtain the scriptures. Yi Xian smiled. All right, since you're using me, I'll use you too. Yi Jiming glared at Yi Xian. Don't be so mischievous, I'm very serious. Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. I know you're very serious, I'm also very serious. He knew that Yi Jiming had a sharp tongue but a soft heart, so he had to play along with her. Yi Jiming took a deep breath. You're really shameless. With that, she turned and walked away. Yi Xian laughed and hurriedly followed. Jiming, do you have any way to solve our current situation? Yi Jiming remained expressionless. No. Yi Xian chuckled, then looked at the old woman cooking the soup. Why don't we get rid of the one cooking the soup? Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. Are you serious? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, Can't I beat her? She's just a soup cooker. Yi Jiming said angrily, Beat your head. The soup cooker used to be a deity. Do you know what a deity is? It's someone who is blessed by the great Tao's nomological laws. This kind of person has the power of a deity. Beat her to death? See that ladle she's using to boil the soup? Do you see that ladle she uses to make soup? She can smash your head with one ladle. Yi Xian looked at Mengpo, who was still cooking soup, and said softly, If fighting won't do, then we'll fight with words. Yi Jiming sneered. Your words are all about bluffing, right? If you can bluff her, Yi Xian said provocatively. You what? Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. What do you want? Yi Xian said seriously. If I succeed, you'll kiss me, how about it? Hearing this, Yi Ximing flew into a rage. Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurriedly said, the pure kind. Yi Ximing stared at Yi Xian, clenching her fists. Yi Xian was about to say something, but she suddenly said, sure. Yi Xian blinked. I was just joking. Yi Ximing was expressionless. I'm serious. Go. Hurry up and bluff her. If you don't, I'll bite you to death right now. Yi Xian. Yi Ximing suddenly said angrily, hurry up and start your performance. Yi Xian smiled sheepishly, then walked towards Mengpa. Behind him, Yi Ximing suddenly said loudly, Mengpa, he's going to bluff you. Hearing this, Yi Xian almost fainted. Damn it. Why is this woman like this? At this time, Mengpa suddenly stopped boiling. She looked up at Yi Xian and smiled sinisterly. Are you trying to bluff me? Yi Xian turned to glare at Yi Ximing, then looked at Mengpa. He thought for a moment, then bit his finger, and a drop of blood emerged from his fingertip. Yi Xian pointed lightly, and the drop of blood floated in front of Mengpa. Mengpa, before I die, I have a dying wish. I want to know who my father is. Can you fulfill my wish? Hearing this, Yi Ximing suddenly felt a sense of unease. Damn it. This guy is going to risk his father. When Mengpa saw that drop of blood essence, a rare trace of seriousness suddenly appeared in her calm eyes. Yi Ximing. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly took out the sword spirit and placed it in front of Mengpa. Mengpa, this sword belongs to my master. My master is the sect leader of the sword sect, and he wears a green robe. I know that I won't be able to escape death today, but this sword is innocent. Please let it go, Mengpa. Mengpa looked at the sword spirit, and her grip on the wooden ladle tightened unconsciously. At this time, Yi Xian took out another sword. It was the other sword at the top of the pagoda, the sword of the banished Immortal Island's founder. Yi Xian placed the sword in front of Mengpa. And this sword, this is my big brother's sword. My big brother likes to wear white robes. Mengpa, please return this sword to my big brother in the future, and help me tell him that I'm useless and can't look for him anymore. Mengpa looked at the two swords in front of her and fell silent. Before she finished, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm and he smiled bitterly. There's another person, her name is Qing. I know that Mengpa definitely doesn't know her, but it's fine. Mengpa, you're so strong, you must be able to see the cause of misfortune on me, right? Mengpa looked at Yi Xian but didn't say anything. Of course she could. This was what shocked her the most at this moment. This guy had the cause of misfortune, but he was still alive. Moreover, this was the first time she had seen the legendary cause of misfortune. So it wasn't a legend but a real existence. Just who is this guy? Yi Xian sighed softly. The only reason I'm still alive now is because of Qing'er's help against the cause of misfortune. But now I know that I'm no match for Mengpa. After Mengpa kills me. Mengpa suddenly said, you're saying that Qing'er is helping you against the cause of misfortune? Yi Xian blinked. Yes. Is there a problem? Mengpa looked straight at Yi Xian. No one can resist the cause of misfortune. Yi Xian spread his hands. But I'm still alive. Two green lights suddenly flashed in Mengpa's eyes. At this moment she seemed to see through Yi Xian completely. A moment later her hands suddenly trembled, her eyes filled with disbelief. There really was someone who was helping this guy block the cause of misfortune. Just who was this guy? Was he the reincarnation of some super expert? Yi Xian suddenly closed his eyes slowly. Dad? Big brother? King, farewell. Mengpa, do it. I won't resist anymore. Mengpa looked at the two swords and the drop of blood in front of her, and after a moment of silence she said, Young master, don't be like this. I'm just someone who makes soup. I've never thought of killing anyone. Yi Ximing. P.S. There's only one person I like, that person I'll vote for. Chapter 1307. To boil soup. On the side, Yi Ximing's expression turned a little ugly. She knew that Mengpa was afraid. However, this was normal. Who wouldn't be afraid after seeing this guy's bloodline and swords? It could be said that the stronger one was, the more they could sense the uniqueness of Yi Xian's bloodline and the power of the two swords. The other was the cause of misfortune. Although this cause of misfortune represented misfortune, what did it mean to be able to survive with the cause of misfortune? It meant that someone was helping Yi Xian defend against the cause of misfortune. How strong must one be to defend against the cause of misfortune? Yi Xian didn't say, but Mengpa had her own thoughts. Mengpa slowly boiled the soup thinking about something. Yi Xian blinked. Mengpa, aren't you going to kill me? Mengpa glanced at Yi Xian. Young master, aren't you going to use your blood and swords to tell me that you have someone behind you? Yi Xian bowed slightly. Senior, I can't beat you. Mengpa said, don't worry, I can beat you, but I don't dare to. Both of them were very frank. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, Senior disappeared for tens of thousands of years and suddenly reappeared. You must have come for me. I wonder who dragged you here. Mengpa chuckled. Young master, why ask when you already know the answer? The woman with the fan. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Her revenge is too quick. Mengpa shook her head and sighed. Young master, you really shouldn't have interfered with the flower of the other shore. Yi Xian looked at Mengpa. I heard from knowing destiny that you are a deity, the protector of the Great Way rules. Someone of your status, why? Mengpa smiled. Because she has a higher status than me. Yi Xian was silent. Mengpa chuckled. Young master, don't worry, I won't do anything. Before coming here, I thought that Gongzi was just an ordinary person, so I wanted to do that person a favor and form a good relationship with him so that I could enter the doubting and seek a better position. However, from the looks of it now, not only is young master not an ordinary person, but he also has so many backers. Although killing young master will form a good relationship with that person, it will also create a huge karma. This deal is not worth it. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Senior, since she wants to kill me, why didn't she come herself? Mengpa looked straight at Yi Xian. Because in her eyes, you don't have the right to make her come here personally. Yi Xian was speechless. Mengpa shook her head and said, Young master, you really shouldn't have interfered with the red spider lilies. Yi Xian smiled and said, Senior should know the ins and outs of that matter, right? Mengpa nodded. I can only say that they are unlucky. Yi Xian laughed. Bad luck? The willfulness of the strong is the fate of the weak. What a joke. Mengpa looked straight at Yi Xian. This is how the world is. Yi Xian looked straight at Mengpa. I heard from knowing destiny that you are the guardian of the Dharma of the Great Way, and the Great Way used to be fair. Shouldn't you be fair too? Otherwise, wouldn't you be smearing the name of the Great Way? Mengpa put down the wooden ladle in her hand and looked at Yi Xian. Fair? Young master, do you think there is such a thing as fairness in this world? Yi Xian looked straight at Mengpa. You are the guardian of the Dharma of the Great Way. Mengpa chuckled. There is a saying in the secular world. When the emperor breaks the law, he will be punished the same as the common people. Young master, let me ask you, do you really think that the emperor breaks the law and the common people are punished the same as the common people? Yi Xian was silent. Mengpa continued, the Dharma of the Great Way is just like the laws in the secular world. It is fair, but our world is very complicated. I have been brewing soup here for hundreds of thousands of years. According to the Dharma of the Great Way, anyone who comes here must drink this soup, forget their past life and reincarnate. However, there are many exceptions such as those with status and background. They don't need to drink the soup and can reincarnate with their memories. This is unfair to many people, but so what? Because I have to give them face. If I don't give them face, they won't give me face. Today I am a god, but tomorrow I may be sweeping the floor. Yi Xian was silent. Mengpa continued, I am the guardian of the Dharma of the Great Way, but this doesn't mean that I can really act fairly. Of course, there are some who act fairly, such as my predecessor. She acted fairly and didn't give face to anyone. Young master, do you know how she is now? She was stripped of her status as a god and became an ordinary person. Then she died 100,000 years ago. Ironically, after she came here, she hoped that I would let her not drink the soup and reincarnate for the sake of the past. Yi Xian said softly, I understand. The Dharma of the Great Way was fair, but people were selfish. It couldn't be said that people were selfish. It could only be said that people in this world often had to be flexible. If they didn't know how to be flexible and didn't understand the ways of the world, they would be played by others. Righteousness, selflessness. The human world wouldn't allow that. Moreover, even Yi Xian himself couldn't be truly selfless and fair. If he were to brew soup here and meet his friends from his past life, he would definitely go easy on them. The Great Way established order, but it was people who protected it. Mengpa continued, just like now, under normal circumstances, I should let young master drink a bowl of soup. However, I won't force you to drink it because if I do, there's a high chance that the people behind young master will take revenge on me in the future. As she spoke, she shook her head and smiled. Anyone can do good deeds, but if there's a price to pay, then no one will do it. And if there's a reward for doing bad deeds, then anyone will do it. Xian was silent. Mengpa continued, Young master, why didn't you fear the enemy and save the red spider lily? Because young master has a strong enough trump card, so young master doesn't panic. But if I may ask, what if there's no one behind young master? Young master, do you still dare to help? As she spoke, she shook her head and smiled. Isn't it ironic? Even if you want to do good deeds, you need to have the strength. Just like in a certain world, you have to consider whether you can support someone who has fallen. Xian said softly, I've thought things too simply. Mengpa smiled. Young master isn't thinking things too simply, but thinking of people too simply. Xian shook his head. Senior, I think you're quibbling. Of course, what you said isn't without reason, but forgive me for being blunt. You have the authority given by the Great Way, but you can't be fair. What are you doing? You're betraying the Great Way. Since you can't do things fairly, then why do you want to maintain order in the Great Way? Of course, you have to understand the ways of the world, but this isn't an excuse for you to be biased. At the end of the day, you're just using the authority given by the Great Way for your own personal gain. As he spoke, he paused, then continued, just like just now, Senior had already disappeared, but in order to curry favor with that mysterious woman, you didn't hesitate to appear and mess with me. Senior, what kind of behavior is this? It's a classic example of bullying the weak and fearing the strong. I don't think the Great Way is wrong, it's you who are protecting it that's wrong. Hearing this, Mengpo's eyes narrowed, murderous intent flashing in the depths of her eyes. Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn it, isn't a gentleman using his mouth, not his fists? At that moment there was a sudden change. Mengpo's body suddenly trembled violently, and soon countless tiny black dots of light appeared on her body, and these black dots of light began to slowly disperse in all directions. Xian was struck dumb at the sight of this. Mengpa looked at her body in horror. No, no, no. Xian looked at Yijiming. What's wrong with her? Yijiming stared at Mengpa. The power of the Great Way in her body is disappearing. The Great Way is stripping her of her godly seat. Hearing this, Xian's eyelids twitched. It can't be because of me, right? Yijiming looked at Xian. This is the first time I've realized that a mouth can be so powerful. You're a genius. Don't cultivate your sword in the future. Cultivate your mouth. Your mouth is invincible. Xian. At that moment, Mengpa suddenly roared. No. Don't. Xian and Yijiming looked at Mengpa. The black dots of light on Mengpo's body were dissipating rapidly. Mengpa suddenly looked at Xian, her expression savage. It's you. It's you. Xian hurriedly said, Mengpa, this has nothing to do with me, I don't know anything about the Great Way. Mengpa glared at Xian, roaring, It's you who ruined my state of mind with your words, ruined my cultivation. It's you. It's you. Xian hesitated, then said, If you want to say that, then ruin my state of mind and cultivation with your words. Come on. I won't resist, go ahead and scold me. Yijiming suddenly burst out laughing. Ruin Xian's state of mind and cultivation with words? She didn't think anyone could do that. Because this guy was shameless. You want to defeat a shameless person with words? That was a fool's dream. Hearing Xian's words, Mengpa flew into a rage. She was about to attack, but she found that she could no longer mobilize the power of the Great Way. At this moment, Mengpa was shocked. She hurriedly looked at Xian. Young master. I already promised not to kill you, why do you still want to harm me? Xian thought for a moment, then said, Senior, I didn't want to harm you, I just discussed it with you. I didn't expect it to turn out like this. I don't think I harmed you, but the Great Way gave up on you. As he spoke, he looked at Yijiming. Right? Yijiming nodded. Yes. Hearing Xian's words, Mengpa was stunned. The Great Way gave up on me. At this moment, a tiny black mark suddenly appeared between Mengpo's brows, and when it appeared, Mengpo's entire body went limp. Xian looked at the black mark. This is, Yijiming said, the mark of a god, it contains the power of the Great Way. At this moment, the mark of a god suddenly flew in front of Xian. Seeing this, Xian's eyelids twitched. What does it mean? Yijiming looked at Xian, slowly clenching his fists. What does it mean? Isn't it obvious? It wants you to become a god. Congratulations, you're now a real god. Chapter 1308. Fraud. Xian was speechless. He looked at Meng Po in the distance. Meng Po lay limp on the ground. Her face was abnormally pale. She was completely different from before. Now she looked like an old woman with one foot in the grave. Meng Po's gaze was dull as she murmured. Xian was silent. He had never thought of targeting Meng Po. After all, she had no intention of killing him. However, he had never thought that she would be stripped of her god just because of his words. This was too childish. Power came from the Grand Tao laws. This was given by the Grand Tao laws, and the Grand Tao laws could be taken back at any time. Thinking of this, Xian had no more thoughts about the god's seal. The power that one cultivated was still the most reliable. At this moment, Meng Po suddenly laughed self-deprecatingly. No wonder after tens of thousands of years of cultivation, my god's power has not improved at all. So it has long given up on me. Xian looked at Meng Po. Meng Po smiled sadly. The funny thing is, I thought that everything I did was approved by it. At this point she looked at Xian. You're right. The Great Tao is fair. It's us, the Guardians, who destroyed its fairness. As a result, many people in the world rebelled against the Tao and broke the Great Tao, causing chaos in the world. Xian said in a low voice, Senior, all of your power comes from this god's seal. Meng Po looked at the god's seal and said softly, In our era, as long as we obtain the approval of the Grand Tao, we could obtain the god's seal. This god's seal could allow us to easily reach the self-release and Tao confirmation realm. Because the Tao is it can easily allow people to reach the self-release and Tao confirmation realm. What we cultivate is also this god's seal. The stronger it is, the stronger we will be. However, once it leaves, our strength will disappear along with it. Saying this, she looked at Xian. Do you know why some people can break through the Tao? It's very simple. Because those who break through the Tao do not cultivate the god's seal. Their power is cultivated by themselves. They are not bound by the Grand Tao laws. Xian looked at the god's seal. If I obtain it, can I directly prove my Tao? Meng Po looked at Xian. Yes. Xian shook his head with a smile. Then let's not. He had to admit that he was a little tempted, but he didn't want to use this method to obtain power. Strength was given by others and others could take it back. But the strength cultivated by oneself would always belong to oneself. Hearing that Xian didn't want it, Meng Po frowned. Do you know what it is? That's the mark of a god. Once you obtain it, not only will you immediately become a god, but you'll also be able to obtain the power of a god's seed. With your current strength, you'll be able to reach Tao corroboration immediately. Xian smiled and said, I don't want this kind of Tao verification. Meng Po stared at Xian. Are you sure you want to give up? Xian looked at the god's seal. You can go. I'm not the best choice for you. However, the god's seal didn't leave. Instead, it floated in front of Xian and tried to enter the space between Xian's eyebrows. Xian's expression changed. Damn it, it's trying to force its way in? Xian hurriedly used his sword intent to block the god's seal, but the god's seal didn't give up. It wanted to enter Xian's body. Seeing this scene, Meng Po was dumbfounded. What was this? Back then, in order to obtain this god's seal, she had done so many things and begged so many times. But now, this god's seal wanted to follow Xian of its own accord. Why was there such a huge gap between them? Seeing that the god's seal insisted on following him, Xian frowned. What is this thing trying to do? Xian looked at Yiming. Yiming said solemnly, It wants you to become a great Tao protector. Xian shook his head. I don't want this kind of power that can be taken back at any time. Of course, I don't want to boil soup here. Meng Po was speechless. Yiming rolled his eyes at Xian. First, you can borrow this power. As long as you borrow it and don't rely on it, there won't be a problem. Second, the great Tao of this world has basically collapsed. After you obtain it, you don't need to boil soup here. Xian looked at Yiming. If I become a great Tao protector, does that mean I'll be tainted by the great Tao's karma? Yiming nodded. Yes. There are disadvantages and advantages. The advantage is that you stand on the side of the great Tao. If you want to prove your Tao in the future, it will be much easier. The disadvantage is that you'll be standing against those Tao defiants. Tao defiants? Xian was a little surprised. What are those? Yiming replied, those who can break through the Tao. They're called Tao defiants. Xian's eyelids twitched. Tao defiants? In other words, I'm standing against those Tao defiants. Yiming continued, didn't you say that the great Tao isn't wrong? Since it isn't, then there's no need to avoid it. It's not a bad thing to be close to the great Tao. As for going against the Tao defiance, there are too few in this world who can break through the Tao. Yi Xian smiled. Right, there's always a price to be paid for what you get. As he spoke, he withdrew his sword intent, and the god's seal entered the center of his forehead. Bang! In an instant, countless strands of mysterious energy started to converge towards Yi Xian. The energy of a god. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes and his aura started to grow stronger and stronger. Power. At this moment, Yi Xian sensed the powerful energy within the god's seal, and he could immediately attain the Tao corroboration realm if he wanted to. But he didn't do so. He didn't want to attain the Tao corroboration realm so easily. Yi Xian started to suppress the energy, and it didn't take long for the god's seal's power to be suppressed. He could use it or not. Yi Xian's body returned to normal. Yi Xian took a deep breath and then looked at Yi Zhiming. I have to say, even I was a little tempted just now. That power is too tempting. Yi Zhiming said indifferently, you held back. Yi Xian nodded. I don't want to become a slave to some power. As if he had thought of something, he asked again, Zhiming then Mu Xing. Yi Zhiming said, she's not a god, she's one of the great Tao. Yi Xian said solemnly, how many great Tao are there? Yi Zhiming looked at Yi Xian. 3,000 great Tao. Do you think that's a joke? Yi Xian blinked. There are so many great Tao. In other words, there are strong and weak great Tao, am I right? Yi Zhiming nodded. Yes. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, what level is the great Tao that acknowledged me? Yi Zhiming said indifferently, you'll have to ask Meng Pa. Yi Xian turned to look at Meng Po, who said solemnly, in the Tao Ting there are 4 types of gods. Ghost God, Human God, Empyrean God and Tao God. Ghost God and Human God are of the same level, but Empyrean God and Tao God are different. They belong to the real gods and they believe in the great Tao, the real great Tao, and they are very powerful. The mysterious woman that young master offended was an Empyrean God. Empyrean God. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and no one knew what he was thinking. Mengpa continued, I work in the nether realm, so I'm also known as a ghost god. However, there are 3 types of ghost gods, first-class ghost gods, second-class ghost gods and third-class ghost gods. I belong to the second-class ghost god, and my position in the nether realm isn't low, but it isn't particularly high either. Yi Xian said solemnly, in other words, I'm also a second-class ghost god? Mengpa nodded, yes. However, you can become stronger. There are 3,000 great Taos and the great Tao cultivates on its own. Since it acknowledges you, it will become stronger as well if you become stronger, and if it becomes stronger you will also become stronger. Although your strength belongs to it, other than cultivation, a god also needs to be worshipped, and a worshipped god is very terrifying. If you have many worshippers, your god's seal will evolve, and it may evolve from Shao Dao to Great Tao. In that case you may become an Empyrean god or even the legendary Tao god. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then asked, the more worshippers the stronger the god's seal, right? Mengpa nodded, not only that but the stronger the worshippers the stronger the god's seal. To put it simply, if you have more than 10 Tao validation experts worshipping you, your god's seal will definitely reach the level of a third-class heavenly god, or even higher. At that time your strength will become even stronger. Yi Xian suddenly said softly, if I can make Qing'er worship me. At this point he suddenly shivered. Holy shit, isn't this too exciting? Yi Zhiming also heard Yi Xian's words and her face also twitched. The god's seal that the plain-dressed woman worshipped Yi Xian? She didn't dare to think about it. This is too crazy. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian asked again, can a person only have one god's seal in their lifetime? Mengpa shook her head. No, but most people only have one god's seal because a great Tao can only choose one person. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Mengpa said solemnly, because a great Tao will not be willing to share its chosen person with others. If 2 great Taos choose one person, then the power of faith it receives will be weakened. So, under normal circumstances, each person will have one Tao and one Tao-E person. Yi Xian was silent for a long time, then asked again, 3,000 great Taos, what is the most powerful Tao? Mengpa was silent for a long time, then said, it could be the legendary Tao of destiny. This Tao contains the supreme law and all things in the world have their own destiny. If you obtain this Tao, you can control your own destiny and the destiny of all living beings, but... At this point she didn't say anything else. Yi Xian asked, but what? Mengpa said solemnly, rumor has it that this Tao has been suppressed. Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Suppressed? Mengpa nodded. I don't know the details, but I do know that many great Daos were reversed, so much so that the Tao almost collapsed. Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at Yi Jiming. Is Qing resisting some kind of great Tao? Yi Jiming was silent for a moment, then said, I don't know. Yi Xian was silent for a long time, then said softly, whatever. When I see Qing in the future, I'll ask her to worship me. I want to see how strong the god seal that Qing worships is. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian with a strange expression. This guy can't really do that, right? If the plain-dressed woman believes in Yi Xian's god's cause. Chapter 1309. Yi Xian put away the god seal and looked at Mengpa. At this moment Mengpa was getting weaker and weaker. Yi Xian did not pity Mengpa. He did not forget that she was here to kill him. Mengpa looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Do it. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Senior, why do you think I want to kill you? Mengpa smiled. To prevent future troubles. Yi Xian thought for a moment. Then he said, just go. Mengpa narrowed her eyes. You won't kill me? Yi Xian nodded. I won't. Mengpa looked at Yi Xian. Aren't you afraid that I will come back for revenge? Yi Xian smiled. You didn't dare to touch me even at your peak. Will you now? Mengpa was silent. Yi Xian said, Mengpa, one last question. Do you know about the Yellow Springs holy water in the netherworld? Mengpa narrowed her eyes. You want the Yellow Springs holy water? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Mengpa said, you can't get it. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Mengpa said softly, the Yellow Springs holy water is very helpful to the soul. To the souls of the netherworld, the Yellow Springs holy water is a supreme divine item. It is guarded by the Lord of the netherworld. It is almost impossible for an outsider to get it. Yi Xian said, isn't the Yellow Springs holy water used to repair the soul? Mengpa nodded, it is. No matter how damaged the soul is, the water can repair it. However, it can not only repair the soul, it can also strengthen it. If you can get a drop of the Yellow Springs holy water, it is no exaggeration to say that your soul will be strengthened by at least 10 times. 10 times. Yi Xian was moved. This was a little crazy. Mengpa laughed at herself. I have served the netherworld for so many years. I have never seen the Yellow Springs holy water, let alone obtained it. This kind of divine object, only the gods of the netherworld have the qualifications to obtain it. Yi Xian asked, where is the underworld river? Mengpa looked at Yi Xian. You want to steal it? Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. No, I just want to borrow some. Granny Meng shook her head. The Yellow Springs holy water is in Fengdu city of the netherworld, and this city is guarded by the Lord of the netherworld. If you dare to step into this city, he will immediately sense it because your physical body is still here. Fengdu city. Yi Xian asked softly, is this Fengdu city the main city of the netherworld? Mengpa nodded. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I understand. Mengpa suddenly said, you really won't kill me? Yi Xian looked at Mengpa and smiled. You may leave. Mengpa looked deeply at Yi Xian, then turned and left. After Mengpa left, Yi Jiming suddenly said, just in case, you should have killed her. Yi Xian chuckled. Jiming, I can kill her, but do you really think she doesn't have the ability to protect herself? Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said softly, there is no fear in her eyes. If I'm not wrong, she definitely has a way to protect herself. Not to mention anything else, as long as she makes even the slightest movement exposing us, we will not be able to bear the consequences. If I don't kill her, she won't be stupid enough to fight us to the death. Yi Jiming nodded. You've thought it through. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Jiming, do you still remember our bet? Hearing this, Yi Jiming suddenly flew into a rage. She glared at Yi Xian, wanting to hit him. Yi Xian smiled. What, you want to go back on your word? This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Yi Jiming was silent. Yi Xian laughed. I'm just joking with you. With that, he walked towards the river of forgetfulness. At this time, Yi Jiming suddenly appeared in front of him. She tiptoed and kissed Yi Xian on the cheek, but the kiss soon broke off. At the same time, she retreated a few meters away, distancing herself from Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned on the spot. Really kissing? Yi Jiming looked coldly at Yi Xian. I lost the bet. Yi Xian was about to speak when the river of forgetfulness suddenly started trembling, and it didn't take long for a sword to emerge from within it. Soul-suppressing sword. Yi Jiming hurriedly said, "Put the sword into the prison pagoda quickly." Yi Xian understood the gravity of the situation and quickly put the soul-suppressing sword into the prison pagoda, because the sword's aura was too strong. After putting the soul-suppressing sword into the prison pagoda, Yi Xian and Yi Jiming looked at the river of forgetfulness. At this time the river of forgetfulness had been completely absorbed. At least tens of millions of ghosts. Yi Xian was a little shocked. This little soul's appetite is too big. At this time Yi Jiming suddenly said, "Someone is coming. Hide." Yi Xian immediately brought Yi Jiming into the prison pagoda, and the prison pagoda concealed itself completely. As soon as the two disappeared, a soul suddenly appeared beside the river of forgetfulness. The soul glanced at the river of forgetfulness and frowned. How is this possible? A moment later the soul turned around and disappeared. At this time Yi Xian and Yi Jiming appeared on the scene. Yi Jiming said solemnly, "The other party might have gone to report to the underworld." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Jiming, I want to make a trip to Fengdu City." Yi Jiming frowned slightly. "To get the Yellow Springs holy water?" Yi Xian nodded. Yi Jiming stared at Yi Xian. "Don't be too greedy." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "To be honest, the main reason I came to the underworld this time is to get the Yellow Springs holy water." Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. "You're not proficient in the path of the soul. You didn't want the netherworld holy water to strengthen your soul. You wanted it to heal your injuries. But your soul is still intact. You came here for someone else." Yi Xian nodded. After a moment of silence, Yi Jiming suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "You came for Moon Yen Yen." Yi Xian nodded. "Yes. Didn't you say that she was injured?" For an expert of her level, it is impossible for her body to be injured, but her soul must have been injured. The Yellow Springs holy water will definitely help her. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. "Before coming to the underworld, you asked me what kind of healing holy item I had. At that time I was still a little doubtful, so this was your goal. And before you came here you made a deal with Mu Xing. If I am not wrong, you should have asked her to help you get the Yellow Springs holy water, and you saved Manju and her sister. The reason why you did not hesitate to offend that mysterious woman sowing evil karma is not only because of your compassion, but also because you want the Yellow Springs holy water." Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. "Saving the sisters is partly out of compassion and partly out of selfishness." Yi Jiming frowned slightly. "Why didn't you let her come and get it herself?" Yi Xian said in a low voice. "Sister Nian said that she does not want to provoke the experts of the underworld. I think the reason why she does not want to provoke the underworld is because of the fifth dimension, and because she is injured she does not want to lick the boots of more opponents." Yi Jiming was so angry that he laughed. "So you came to provoke them for her?" Yi Xian. "Ah, Yi Xian. Have you ever thought about who you are? Even she does not dare to provoke the underworld, so what right do you have to do it? Because you have a lot of backing?" The underworld. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Do you know that you have backing? Do they care about your backing? And just now on the Yellow Springs path, do you know that woman is a doubting? Not only is she a doubting, she is also a heavenly deity. That woman's identity is not simple. Just because you want the Yellow Springs holy water, you offended her, sowing evil karma. Aren't you very smart? How can you be so stupid at this moment?" Yi Xian smiled. "If there is something wrong with your soul, I will do the same." Yi Jiming stared at Yi Xian angrily said, "You want to trick me again. I will not believe you." Yi Xian chuckled. "Jiming, do you know how much Sister Nian has done for me?" Yi Jiming sneered. "Jiming, do you know how much Sister Nian has done for me? She just wants to use you. That woman is not as good as you think she is. Not only her, I am also very bad. I also want to use you to fight against the power behind me. I am even worse than her." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "Actually, I am also very bad. I am also using you." Yi Jiming was silent. Yi Xian walked in front of Yi Jiming and said seriously, "Sister Nian has done too much for me. I want to help her a little. But now I have to go to Fengdu City, the main city of the underworld. It is extremely dangerous. I can't bring you along. I have already made a deal with Mu Xing. I will help her save someone. She will help me once and guarantee your safety. Now go back. She will take care of you in secret after you leave. You can stay by her side and wait for me." As he spoke, he took out 2 Tao scriptures and placed them in Yi Jiming's hands. You are very concerned about Tao scriptures. Although I do not know why you are so concerned about Tao scriptures, I know you want these 2 Tao scriptures. Now I am giving them to you. Yi Jiming did not receive the Tao scriptures. She looked at Yi Xian and sneered. Are you going to make arrangements for your funeral? Yi Xian smiled. I will be careful, you know I do not do things without confidence. As he spoke, he blinked. Jiming, can you tell me who you are? Yi Jiming was expressionless. Aren't you very good at guessing? Why don't you guess? Yi Xian shook his head. You know too many things. You give me the feeling that there is nothing you do not know. There is nothing you do not know. So I can't guess. Yi Jiming looked at the 2 Tao scriptures, not saying a word. Yi Xian smiled and said, these 2 Taoist scriptures are now yours. As he finished speaking, he turned and left. At this moment, Yi Jiming suddenly said, I will go with you. Yi Xian shook his head. No, Yi Jiming appeared in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian coldly. You don't agree, right? I will inform the underworld now. You will fall short at the last moment. Do you want to try? Yi Xian's face was filled with black lines. Why are you like this? Yi Jiming looked straight at Yi Xian. I will go with you. Yi Xian said solemnly, knowing destiny, it is very dangerous. Yi Jiming was expressionless. Don't worry, I will not die even if you die. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Yi Jiming suddenly said, without my help, you will not get the Yellow Springs holy water, or should I say, you will die the moment you enter Fengdu City. Yi Xian frowned. Why? Yi Jiming sneered. I am not telling you. Yi Xian. Yi Jiming suddenly threw the 2 Tao scriptures to Yi Xian. She glared at Yi Xian. Also, don't play with me, don't play tricks with me, I will not fall for it. As she finished speaking, she turned and left. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. What a silly girl. But his heart felt warm. End of this chapter. Chapter 13:10. Along the way, Yi Jiming was expressionless and silent. Clearly she was still angry. But Yi Xian couldn't understand why she was angry. Yi Xian walked to Yi Jiming's side and Yi Jiming glared at him. Stay away from me. Yi Xian said seriously, Jiming, I actually want you to come with me to Fengdu because without you, I'm blind in the netherworld. But I'm afraid I'll implicate you. Yi Jiming looked into the distance, her eyes solemn. The netherworld is dangerous beyond your imagination. I can only say that Mu Xing doesn't have good intentions. Don't think that you tricked her. At her level, her intelligence can't be low. While you're using her, you don't know that she's also using you. Yi Xian nodded. I know. Yi Jiming glanced at Yi Xian. You know, but you still came. Yi Xian smiled. I want the Yellow Springs holy water. Yi Jiming sighed. His heart was filled with complicated emotions. This guy in front of him was usually smart, but he would do stupid things at times. Yi Xian was about to speak when he suddenly froze. In the next moment, he and Yi Jiming disappeared. Inside the prison pagoda, the two looked at the soul-quelling sword in the first floor, their eyes filled with shock. The shape of the soul-suppressing sword in front of him had already changed. Now the soul-suppressing sword was completely black, as if it was condensed from black ink. And the powerful soul aura it emitted made even Yi Xian's expression change. Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. Yi Jiming said solemnly, I'm afraid this sword is about to reach the legendary Tao-proving realm. Tao-proving realm. Yi Xian was shocked. You mean little soul is going to prove her Tao? Yi Jiming nodded. All living things in the world can prove their Tao. Your sword has absorbed too many vengeful spirits, and many of those vengeful spirits are super cultivators. It has absorbed their memories and power. Of course, whether or not it can achieve Tao will depend on its own luck. Yi Xian said in a low voice, knowing destiny, have you ever seen a divine object that can prove Tao? Yi Jiming said calmly, the fan in the mysterious woman's hand is it. Yi Xian took out the green-robed man's sword. What rank is this? Yi Jiming glanced at Yi Xian. This sword has no realm. There was no realm. Yi Xian said softly, I understand. These swords were not within the realm. Just like their master, they were not restricted by the realm. In this world there were two kinds of experts. The experts of the Tao canon and those outside of it. The green-robed man had no realm and neither did the Qing'er. Those without realms were the most ferocious. Yi Jiming looked at the soul-suppressing sword. Give her some time. If nothing goes wrong, she should be able to prove her Tao. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. I haven't even reached Dao validation yet. At this point he looked at Yi Jiming. I can also absorb death qi and yin qi. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. Don't even think about it. The death qi and yin qi here are equivalent to the spiritual qi in the world of the living. If you absorb them you will definitely alarm the super experts here. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian and shook his head. I suddenly realized that you are very effective against the underworld. This sword is extremely effective against the soul. Can be said that if the self-release realm experts here fight you, they won't even be able to fight back. Moreover, you are like a fish in water here. Although the spiritual qi here is sparse, your body can absorb yin qi and death qi. It can be said that apart from the few heavenly god-level experts here, ordinary experts can't do anything to you. Yi Xian nodded. Actually, he also wanted to absorb the yin qi and death qi here. This chapter is not finished, please continue. Because if he absorbed both the death qi and yin qi in the netherworld he might be able to directly prove his Dao. Unfortunately he couldn't do that for now. A moment later Yi Xian and Yi Jiming left the world prison pagoda. The two continued forward. The two did not choose to fly. Flying in this place was akin to courting death. Just as they walked out of the bridge of helplessness, Yi Xian saw a platform. On the platform there was a bronze mirror. Yi Xian blinked. Jiming, is that bronze mirror a treasure? Yi Jiming glared at Yi Xian. Treasure your head. That's the home viewing platform. Yi Xian frowned. Home viewing platform? Yi Jiming nodded. It said that this home viewing platform was built by a bodhisattva of the Buddha realm to let the deceased put down their loved ones. On the home viewing platform, one can take one last look at one's hometown and loved ones. This is the last look. After this look, everything from the previous life will disappear like smoke. Yi Xian was curious. Is it really possible? Yi Jiming nodded. It used to be possible but I don't know now. Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. Do you want to try? Yi Jiming replied indifferently, you can try if you want. Yi Xian chuckled. Then let's try. With that he stepped onto the home viewing platform. No movement. Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. Looks like it won't work. Yi Jiming said. Try using your dermic powers. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. Then he channeled his dermic powers into the bronze mirror. Soon the bronze mirror trembled violently. Then an image appeared on the bronze mirror. Seeing this image Yi Xian was stunned. Soon he saw the Yi clan in the bronze mirror. At this time the Yi clan had already declined and the clan was extremely deserted. There were only a dozen or so people left and among these dozen or so people he saw a familiar face. An old man. The old man who had once bullied him. This old man was not dead yet but he was already old and senile. Furthermore he did not have any cultivation. In the courtyard the old man seemed to sense something. He suddenly turned his head and was stunned. His body gradually trembled. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the side. Old fart, what are you standing there for? Why aren't you working? Don't you want to eat? The Grand Elder's body trembled. He quickly picked up a broom and started sweeping the floor. Not far away someone was cursing. It's all because of this old fart who chased young Master Yi Xian away. Otherwise our Yi clan would not have fallen to this state. In front of the home viewing platform Yi Xian was silent. Qingqing Yi clan? He had almost forgotten about it. The image on the bronze mirror suddenly changed to a palace. In front of the palace's main hall, a woman in a dragon robe was looking at the sky. No one knew what she was thinking. When he saw the woman Yi Xian slowly clenched his right hand. At this moment the woman in the dragon robe suddenly opened her right hand. In her right hand was a small wooden figurine. The wooden figurine looked exactly like Yi Xian. The woman gently stroked the wooden figurine. After a while she shook her head. A guy who doesn't recognize people after putting on his pants. With that she turned and left. Below the home viewing platform, Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian and sneered. Yi Xian's expression was a little unnatural. At this moment the image on the bronze mirror gradually disappeared. After a long silence Yi Xian turned to Yi Jiming. Jiming, do you want to come up and take a look? Yi Jiming was expressionless. You want to see my background, right? This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian chuckled. Yes. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian walked up to the home viewing platform. Yi Xian hurriedly infused his Buddhist power into the bronze mirror. The bronze mirror trembled slightly and soon an image gradually formed. Yi Ximing looked at the bronze mirror expressionlessly. Yi Xian stared at the bronze mirror. Suddenly, a huge abyss appeared in the bronze mirror. The abyss looked like a bloody mouth standing between several mountains. The image was a little blurry and Yi Xian couldn't see it clearly. As the image gradually became clearer, a voice suddenly rang out from the bottom of the abyss. Who dares to spy on the abyss? With that, a powerful force suddenly shot up to the sky. Boom! The image in the bronze mirror suddenly stopped. The abyss. Yi Xian looked at Yi Ximing. Ximing, you come from the abyss? Yi Ximing nodded. Yi Xian asked again, what kind of place is the abyss? Yi Ximing said indifferently, it's not a good place. Yi Xian was speechless. Yi Ximing suddenly said, let's go. With that she walked into the distance. Yi Xian hurriedly followed. He glanced at Yi Ximing. How is the abyss compared to the underworld? Yi Ximing said, it can't compare to the underworld. Yi Xian said softly, in other words, it's stronger than the underworld now. Yi Ximing nodded. You can say that. However, the premise is that the bodhisattva and that person from the underworld don't interfere. If they interfere, other than the top 2 or 3 forces, no other force can stand against the underworld. Saying this, she glanced at Yi Xian. Of course, other than you, the powerful second generation. Yi Xian was speechless. Yi Ximing said again, I know you're going to ask me which bodhisattva and person I am, right? Yi Xian nodded and smiled. Ximing knows me best. Yi Ximing glanced at Yi Xian. The bodhisattva is the Nanzang bodhisattva of the Buddhist realm. He's a very powerful bodhisattva. He could have become a Buddha but he didn't. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Yi Ximing said softly, because he once made a vow that he would not become a Buddha until all the evil spirits in hell are gone. Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Isn't that a little difficult? Yi Ximing nodded. It's not just a little difficult. Look, even now, the Tendo has collapsed and the evil spirits are still increasing. Yi Xian suddenly said, if I destroy the realm of ultimate bliss, will this bodhisattva come after me? Yi Ximing sneered. What do you think? Yi Xian said in a low voice, is he really that strong? Yi Ximing said calmly, he has already attained Tao at least tens of thousands of years ago. Moreover, his opponent was a protector of the Great Tao, which was the Great Tao of Expiation. This Great Tao of Expiation was ranked in the top 30 of the 3,000 Great Taos. He was a genuine heavenly god and a top-notch one at that. The past lords of the underworld have been respectful to him. Even the doubting dare not offend him. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I'm starting to panic when you put it like that. Yi Ximing sneered. What's there to panic about? Aren't you good at fighting? Just beat him up. Yi Xian was speechless. Yi Ximing continued walking forward. Yi Xian hurriedly caught up with him and asked, who's that person? Yi Ximing stopped and said in a low voice, a person who once broke through Tao and regretted it. He then imprisoned himself in the 18th level of hell, torturing himself for the rest of his life. Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. C, he's that cruel to himself? End of this chapter. Chapter 13:11. Yi Ximing nodded. Indeed. Yi Xian asked, do you know who it is? Yi Ximing shook his head, I don't. I only know that there's a taboo in the 18th level of hell, and that taboo is that mysterious person. Yi Xian asked again, what about the Lord of the Underworld? How strong is he? Yi Ximing replied softly, I don't know. The past lords of the underworld have always been very mysterious, and the current one is even more so. There's almost no information about him in the world of the living. Yi Xian frowned. Why so mysterious? Yi Ximing shook his head. I don't know. Yi Xian fell silent. Yi Ximing glanced at Yi Xian. It's not without reason that Moon Yin doesn't want to provoke the underworld. Of course, I believe that if the world knew of her strength, there wouldn't be many forces that would be willing to provoke her. Yi Xian asked in a low voice, Ximing, even you can't see Sister Nian's true strength? Yi Ximing shook his head. I can't. This Sister Nian of yours is too mysterious. Yi Xian nodded. She's too mysterious. Not only is she mysterious but she also likes to act weak. Hearing this, Yi Ximing's mouth twitched. That woman is a little scary. As the two spoke, they arrived at a mountain range. The mountain range was shrouded in yin qi, making it extremely eerie. Miserable shrieks could be heard from time to time. Yi Xian turned to look at Yi Jiming. Jiming, this is? Yi Jiming looked at the mountain range before him with a solemn expression. This is the legendary Ferocious Dog Mountain Range. Yi Xian frowned. Ferocious Dog Mountain Range? Yi Jiming nodded. This Ferocious Dog Mountain Range is home to countless ferocious dogs from the Great Desolation era. These dogs are known as the ferocious hounds, and they often feed on souls. When they consume souls, they do not devour them immediately but eat them bit by bit. Therefore the souls they consume are worse than death. Yi Xian frowned. Their target is all souls? Yi Jiming shook his head. Not in the past. In the past they only ate evil spirits, but now. Upon hearing this, Yi Xian understood. Now that the Great Tao had collapsed, these hyenas would probably not abide by the rules anymore. Yi Xian collected his thoughts. Are we going to take a detour? Yi Jiming shook his head. This is the shortest route to Fengdu City. If we were to take a detour, it would take at least a day. Yi Xian nodded. Then let's go. With that, Yi Xian and Yi Jiming entered the Ferocious Dog Ridge. As soon as they entered the Ferocious Dog Ridge, Yi Xian felt a piercingly cold air. At the same time, a ferocious dog suddenly appeared in front of them. Hyena. This hyena wasn't big, only a little bigger than an ordinary dog, but it exuded a fierce aura. Yi Xian looked at the hyena and said with a smile, It can't be that it wants to bite us, right? Yi Jiming said indifferently, This dog has a spirit. It should be able to sense our strength. As soon as Yi Jiming finished speaking, the hyena immediately turned around and disappeared into the wild grass. Yi Jiming said, Let's go. With that, she and Yi Xian walked into the distance. Not long later, the two of them entered the vast mountain range. During this time, Yi Xian and Yi Jiming heard countless screams. Some of them were far away, some were close. At this moment, Yi Xian and Yi Jiming came to a sudden stop. Not far away from them, there were several hyenas tearing at a man. The man was howling hysterically in pain. The man suddenly looked at Yi Xian and Yi Jiming. When he saw them, the man hurriedly said, Save me. Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. Yi Jiming said indifferently, Save me if you want to. Just as Yi Xian was about to make a move, the man suddenly roared, Hurry up and save me. Hearing that, Yi Xian frowned. Brother, isn't there something wrong with your tone? The man roared, You can't just watch me die. You? Yi Xian frowned deeply. This guy actually used such a matter-of-fact tone to ask for help? The man's face suddenly turned savage. He glared at Yi Xian with hatred. You'll die a horrible death, you'll die a horrible death. Yi Xian suddenly looked at the hyenas. Don't bite so fast. Take it slow. Yes, start from his thighs. Yes, bite his penis. Yes, just like that. Yi Jiming rolled his eyes at Yi Xian, speechless. In the distance, the man's soul was disappearing bit by bit. The pain made Yi Xian's scalp go numb. This was the torture of 1,000 cuts in the mortal world. The man was cursing Yi Xian crazily, which made him quite speechless. Yi Xian looked at the dying man and smiled. Brother, it's these hyenas that are biting you. Why are you cursing me? The man did not reply. He was still cursing. At this moment, his mind was no longer normal. Not long after, the man was eaten clean. The hyenas turned to look at Yi Xian and Yi Jiming. They did not pounce on Yi Xian and Yi Jiming. Instead, they turned around and ran away. These hyenas were able to survive until now. Their intelligence was not low. Although the Wild Dog Ridge was their territory, it was not a place that just any ghost could eat. As long as they sensed danger, they would immediately retreat. Seeing the hyenas retreat, Yi Xian shook his head. Humans are inferior to dogs. Yi Jiming said softly, Do you think that person was stupid? Yi Xian smiled. Yes. Yi Jiming shook his head. There are countless people more stupid than him in the world. There will always be people who like to take others' help for granted. Little do they know that no one owes anyone anything in this world. If others help you, it is a favor. You should be grateful. Yi Xian smiled. Indeed. The two continued forward. During this time, no hyenas came to disturb them. Their journey was smooth. Just as they were about to leave the Wild Dog Ridge, Yi Jiming suddenly stopped. She and Yi Xian looked not too far away. Not too far away, a pack of hyenas was chasing a woman. The woman was about 17 or 18 years old. She wore a white dress, her hair draped over her shoulders and her face was pale. She was a female ghost. Seeing that the hyenas were about to catch up to the woman, Zhou Xian suddenly put his fingers together, and a tiny wisp of sword energy pierced through the air. Very soon that tiny wisp of sword energy directly appeared behind the woman, and the pack of hyenas retreated continuously, their eyes filled with fear. The hyenas glanced at Zhou Xian and Yi Jiming, then turned and ran. Zhou Xian looked at the woman not too far away. The woman was also looking at him and Yi Jiming. Zhou Xian sized up the woman. He had to admit that this female ghost was extremely beautiful. Her eyes were bright and her teeth were white. She looked like someone who walked out of a painting. Zhou Xian sighed in his heart. Are all the female ghosts of the netherworld so beautiful? The woman floated in front of Zhou Xian and Yi Jiming. She nodded slightly. Thank you. Zhou Xian smiled. Miss, you are. The woman replied, Ain spirit. Zhou Xian sized up the woman. She was a soul and her soul wasn't very strong. Could she really be an ordinary Ain spirit? That didn't make sense. The women he met were usually very strong. At this time Yi Jiming suddenly said, let's go. Zhou Xian nodded. He and Yi Jiming left, but before they could take 2 steps, they suddenly turned around. The woman was following them. It's them. Yi Jiming frowned. What are you doing? The woman pointed in the distance. You're going to Fengdu? Zhou Xian blinked. No, we're not going to Fengdu. The woman shook her head. There's a ghost-revealing mirror in Fengdu City. If you go like this you'll be seen by it. Zhou Xian frowned. You know we're not souls? The woman nodded. You have the aura of the Yang world on you. Zhou Xian turned to look at Yi Jiming. Did Mu Xing's technique to conceal our aura from the Yang realm lose its effect? Yi Jiming shook his head. It didn't. Hearing that, Yi Xian's expression changed. He looked at the woman not far away. Who are you? The woman suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian. Take me away. Yi Xian was stunned on the spot. Yi Jiming looked at the woman in front of him. No one knew what he was thinking. The woman said again. Take me away. Yi Xian tugged at Yi Jiming. Jiming, open your heavenly eye and look at her. Yi Jiming stared at the woman. I can't see through her. She's either an ordinary soul or she's at the same level as Moon Yan. Yi Xian fell silent. It's most likely the second. The woman was still looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, Why are you following me? The woman said softly, I want to leave this place. Yi Xian was still confused. Then why did you choose me? The woman looked at Yi Xian. Maybe it's fate or maybe it's a coincidence. Yi Xian was speechless. Yi Jiming suddenly said, Let's go. With that she pulled Yi Xian away. At this moment the woman suddenly said, The guardian of the great abyss. Perhaps this is a good karma. The guardian of the great abyss. Yi Jiming stopped and turned to look at the woman. She suddenly put her fingers on her forehead. Heavenly eye open. Yi Jiming's forehead suddenly split open. Then a beam of light enveloped the woman in the distance. The woman stood motionless and did not resist. A moment later Yi Jiming's eyes narrowed. You've revealed everything about yourself. The woman looked at Yi Jiming. Woman from the great abyss, I have no intention of harming him. On the contrary, I shouldn't have met him here. If I'm not wrong, it's because of the calamity caused on him. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. Do you want her to follow? Yi Xian smiled. I'll listen to you. If you want her to follow, she'll follow. If you want her to not follow, she won't follow. Hearing this, Yi Jiming's expression softened. It was obvious that Yi Xian was on her side. Yi Jiming was silent as if thinking about something. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Who are you? The woman shook her head. A ghost. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. Why can't I meet a normal woman? As he said this, he looked at Yi Jiming. I really don't want to fight anymore. I want to start a harem and take all the women I meet. I believe that if I can do that, I can definitely rule over the heavens. At this moment the woman suddenly said, I'm a ghost. You can't even let ghosts go? Yi Jiming sneered. What's a ghost? He doesn't even want to let the heavens go. Also, that Sanxing is a rock. Who knows, he might even have designs on a rock. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. I forgot to ask for votes yesterday. I feel like I've lost a few thousand monthly votes. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. Chapter 13:12. Xian was speechless. I was only joking. Yiximing seems to be very angry. At this moment the woman not far away suddenly said, "Let me follow you. I'll bring you to Fengdu City." Yiximing sneered, "We can go without you." The woman looked at Yiximing. "People of the Dane Kingdom, you have an impure motive by following him. Why can't I follow him?" Yiximing was expressionless. "You should ask him." Then she looked at Yixian. "Are you going to let her follow us?" Yixian quickly said, "I told you. I'll listen to you. If you don't, I won't let her follow us." Yiximing looked at the woman with provocation. The woman thought for a moment and said, "Let me guess. All of you probably have two objectives for coming here. The first is probably for the Tao scripture of legend, and the second is probably for the nether springs of the netherworld, right?" Yixian's mouth twitched. "Damn, is this woman a deity?" Yiximing looked at the woman. "Can you help us get the underworld holy water?" The woman shook her head. "No." Yiximing said indifferently, "If you can't, then there's no need for you to follow us." The woman suddenly said, "But I know the whereabouts of the Tao scripture." "Tao scripture?" Yixian looked at the woman. "You know the whereabouts of the Tao scripture?" The woman nodded. "The fifth Tao scripture is in the underworld and I know where it is." Yixian said in a deep voice, "What do you want from me?" The woman looked at Yixian. "I just want to follow you for a period of time. After a period of time, if you can't satisfy me, I'll leave." Yixian looked at Yiximing, who was silent for a long time. "Make your own decision." Yixian smiled. "Let's go." Then he pulled Yiximing and left. This woman was too mysterious. He didn't want her to follow him. At this moment the woman suddenly said, "We'll meet again." Yixian turned his head and glanced at the woman. The woman was also looking at him. There was an indescribable smile on her face. Seeing this, Yixian's heart was suddenly filled with anger. He turned around and walked in front of the woman. He looked her straight in the eye. "Do you really want to follow me?" The woman nodded. Yixian suddenly took out a drop of blood essence and passed it to the woman. "Senior, do you know what bloodline this is?" The woman looked at the bloodline. "I don't know, but it's very strong." Yixian asked, "Have you seen such a powerful bloodline before?" The woman shook her head. "No." Yixian then took out the green-robed man's sword. "Senior, do you know what sword this is?" The woman looked at the sword and was silent for a long time. "It's not within the realm." Yixian nodded slightly. After that, he took out the sword of the banished Immortal Island's patriarch. "Senior, look at this one." The woman looked at Yixian. "What do you want to say?" Yixian looked straight at the woman. "You can see the calamity cause on me, right?" The woman nodded. "If you want to say something, you can say it directly." Yixian shook his head and smiled. "I don't mean anything else. Since Senior wants to follow me, then follow me. If Senior needs anything, you can tell me. I'll definitely do my best to help you." The woman said, "I really do have a favor that I need your help with." The corners of Yixian's mouth twitched. Damn it. Does this woman know how to be polite? She really doesn't know how to be polite. The woman looked at Yixian. "You said it." Yixian hesitated for a moment. "What favor?" The woman said, "There's a very powerful sword in your body. Can I enter it to recuperate?" "Don't worry. I won't ask for your help for free. I'll go in and recuperate." Soul-suppressing sword. Yixian knew that she was talking about soul-suppressing sword. So she took a liking to soul-suppressing sword. Yixian turned to look at Yiximing. Yiximing spoke softly. "You decide." She didn't dare to interfere in Yixian's matters. It wasn't that she didn't want to, but she didn't dare. Because her intuition told her that if she forcefully interfered, then it wouldn't get better and it would only get worse. After all, she didn't have Moon Yanyan's formidable strength. All she could do was let Yixian make his own choice. Yixian thought for a long time before he said, "Then can you help me with something?" The woman looked at Yixian. "What?" Yixian said, "I want the Yellow Springs holy water." The woman pointed into the distance. "Go straight from here and you'll arrive at Fengdu City after 500 kilometers. The Yellow Springs River is in a forbidden area of Fengdu City." The corners of Yixian's mouth twitched. "I want you to help me get the Yellow Springs holy water." The woman shook her head. "I can't do that." Yixian frowned. "Aren't you supposed to be very formidable?" The woman spoke softly. Besides the Lord of the Underworld personally guarding the Yellow Springs River, there are at least 5 other Dao Validation Realm experts. Besides that, there's a super grand formation there. So long as something happens in Fengdu City, the ghost emperors of the underworld can immediately appear there. Yi Xian spoke solemnly. Is there a huge gap in strength between me and the Lord of the Underworld? The woman blinked and said. Yi Xian's face darkened. What do you mean by that? The woman thought for a moment and said, you should be able to fight a ghost emperor now. Yi Xian frowned slightly. I'm only qualified to fight a ghost emperor? The woman spoke indifferently. A ghost emperor is at least at the peak of the Dao Validation Realm. Yi Xian turned to look at Yi Jiming. Yi Jiming nodded. Yes. The woman continued. Besides the ghost emperors of the underworld, there's also a king of the underworld who's in seclusion, 3 judges, and a king of hell who rules the 18 levels of hell. In short, there are many other experts. Yi Xian frowned slightly. These people you mentioned are all at the Dao Validation Realm? The woman nodded. Yes. Yi Xian said solemnly, there are so many Dao Validation Realm experts in the underworld? As he spoke, he looked at Yi Jiming. Yi Jiming nodded. Actually, she didn't tell us everything. There are still some experts in the underworld that we don't know about. You should know what she's trying to say. Yi Xian knew that the woman wanted him to give up. Yi Xian smiled. It's fine. I have my own plans. Yi Jiming didn't say anything. She knew that this fellow was usually joking around, but once he got serious, even 10 bulls couldn't pull him back. However, she wasn't particularly worried because this fellow would never do anything stupid. Since he dared to go to Fengdu, he must have some trump card. Yi Xian didn't ask further and continued on his way with Yi Jiming and the mysterious woman. On the way, Yi Xian glanced at the mysterious woman. How should I address you? The mysterious woman replied, you can call me Ain. Ain. Yi Xian nodded and was about to say something when Yi Jiming suddenly said, we should be at the legendary Samsara temple. Yi Xian looked into the distance. At the end of his vision he could vaguely see a black temple. Yi Xian asked, Samsara temple? Yi Jiming replied, Samsara temple is also known as the reincarnation temple. People can reincarnate here. At the side, Ain suddenly said, this place is divided into 6 paths. Tendo, Azura, human, hell, ghost and animal. The first 3 are the good path and the last 3 are the evil path. Reincarnating here will determine whether a person walks the good or evil path based on what they did when they were alive. But now, the good and evil reincarnation path has lost its effect. Not only is there no way to determine good or evil, even reincarnation has lost its function. This place is in ruins and ghosts rarely come here. It's very secluded. Yi Xian whispered, I see. I thought it was because there are very few ghosts here. Along the way he really didn't see many ghosts. Not long after, the 3 of them arrived at the Great Hall. The Great Hall was incomparably gloomy, and it was divided into 6 paths that corresponded to the heaven path, the Azura path, the human path, the hell path, the ghost path and the animal path. Yi Xian's divine sense scanned the Samsara temple. There were no ghosts here. Yi Xian suddenly asked, can I take this thing with me? Yi Jiming's eyelids twitched. She looked at Yi Xian. What for? Ain also looked at Yi Xian. This thing is useless because the great Tao has disappeared. It's just a broken temple. Yi Xian thought for a moment then said, let's go in and take a look. With that he walked towards the Samsara temple. Behind him Ain looked at Yi Jiming. Has he always been this bandit? Ain. After Yi Xian entered the Samsara temple it was empty. Around the temple there were all kinds of eerie murals. The underworld was really cold, not a place for people to stay. Yi Xian looked around then said, is there anyone who wants to leave a legacy? I'm very suitable. Yi Jiming, who had just entered, almost fainted when he heard this. So this was what this guy was planning. Yin's expression was a little strange. Was it a mistake for him to follow this guy? This guy was too unreliable. Yi Xian didn't give up when there was no response and he said again, is there anyone who wants to leave a legacy? I'm not talented, but I'm the #1 genius in the Yang realm, the #1 swordsman, the #1 body cultivator. I'm invincible below first release and I'm invincible above first release. Behind Yi Xian, Ain suddenly said, I'm going out to calm down. With that she turned around and left. Yi Jiming said solemnly, I need to calm down as well. With that she turned around and left. When the two women reached the entrance of the temple suddenly trembled. Zhou Xian was stunned when he saw this. Behind him the two women suddenly stopped. Yiximing's eyes narrowed slightly and there was a trace of shock in them. She had the heavenly eye and she'd looked around when she'd just entered. There was nothing here. But now it seemed that wasn't the case. Ain, who was beside her, had a trace of doubt in her eyes. She turned to look not far away and said softly in her heart, "No way, you really took a fancy to this thick-skinned guy." At this moment Zhou Xian suddenly bowed respectfully. Disciple greets master. Ain, Yiximing. Chapter 13:13. There were many times and many things that you had to try. How would you know if you didn't try? How would you know if you didn't try? In any case you wouldn't die if you tried. As for shame, for Zhou Xian, shame was of no use at all. The moment you chose to be shameless was the moment you rose in life. Right at this moment an old man suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian. The old man wore a black robe and held a black mirror in his hand. When the old man saw Zhou Xian acknowledge him as his master, he hurriedly waved his hand. "Little brother, don't just bow to me." Zhou Xian blinked. "Yes, master." The old man was slightly speechless. He was about to speak when he seemed to notice something, and he suddenly looked at the nearby Ain. Ain smiled slightly. There was a trace of shock in the old man's eyes. "It's you." Ain nodded. Zhou Xian hurriedly asked, "Who is she?" The old man hesitated for a moment and then he looked at Ain. Ain smiled. "Don't worry about me. You two talk about your own matters." When he heard this, the old man understood and nodded. "Yes, yes." As he spoke, he looked at Zhou Xian. As he looked at Zhou Xian, his expression was slightly strange. "Little brother, you." Zhou Xian hurriedly walked over to Ain's side. He smiled. "Miss Ain and I are good friends. Since Senior knows Miss Ain, then we're on the same side. It's fine if Senior doesn't want to give me the inheritance. Really, I don't like to force things." The old man glanced at Ain, and there was very little hesitation in his heart. He couldn't figure out the relationship between Zhou Xian and Ain. Zhou Xian suddenly smiled. "Ain, we can't make things difficult for Senior. Let's go." As he spoke, he turned and left. Ain. The corners of Ain's mouth twitched. The old man's expression changed drastically and he hurriedly said, "Little brother, please wait." Zhou Xian turned around to gaze at the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man hesitated for a moment before he said, "Young brother, you aren't Ain's spirit." Zhou Xian said seriously, "Yes." The black-robed elder fell silent. Zhou Xian suddenly looked at Ain. "Is this old man powerful?" Ain glanced at Zhou Xian and was about to speak when the black-robed elder beside him suddenly said proudly, "The old man is the reincarnation king, the master of the Samsara temple. He is in charge of the cycle of life and death." Wenhui Wang. Zhou Xian blinked and then he said, "Senior is a heavenly god." The black-robed old man said proudly, "The old man is not only a god, but also a god with real power." Zhou Xian was speechless. It turned out that the guardians of the Great Tao were the same as those in the secular world. Their official titles were also divided into those with power and those without. Zhou Xian restrained his thoughts and said, "Senior, have you perished?" The black-robed old man nodded with a downcast expression, "Yes. The reason I left a strand of my soul here was to find an inheritor to pass down the Tao of Samsara. Unfortunately, I haven't found a suitable candidate after so many years." Zhou Xian hurriedly pointed at himself, "Senior, what do you think of me?" The black-robed old man glanced at Zhou Xian, and then he hesitated for a moment before he said, "To be honest, you aren't very suitable. What I need is a very steady person. Because once you obtain the God seal of the Grand Tao of Samsara, you'll possess the ability to reincarnate. If the holder of the seal isn't steady enough, then it'll be a calamity for the people of the world." Zhou Xian smiled. "Actually, Senior doesn't know that others only know that I'm boastful on the outside, but they don't know that I'm actually very mature and steady on the inside." The black-robed old man gazed at Zhou Xian. "I can't tell." Zhou Xian was speechless. Yiximing suddenly said, "You've actually made up your mind, right?" The black-robed old man nodded and then he gazed at Zhou Xian. "Little brother, you're an extraordinary genius, but you really aren't suitable to wield the Grand Tao of Samsara." "So," Zhou Xian hurriedly said, Senior, how do you know that I can't if you don't let me try? The black-robed old man smiled bitterly. You can't try. A mysterious seal suddenly appeared on the center of Yi Xian's forehead. The God Seal. A trace of surprise flashed through the black-robed old man's eyes. You? Yi Xian smiled. Senior, I'm a protector of the Grand Tao as well. The black-robed old man spoke solemnly. That's quite surprising to the old man. However, since you already possess a God Seal, then it's even more impossible for you to wield the Grand Tao of Samsara. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? The black-robed old man said, because a person can only protect a single Grand Tao. Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he smiled. Fine. I won't force it. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to look at Ain and smiled. Let's go. Ain gazed at Yi Xian. Are you really not going to force it? Yi Xian smiled. I thought about it and decided not to. After all, I might become a Tao breaker in the future as well. A Tao breaker. Yin's eyes immediately narrowed while the black-robed old man's face became slightly gloomy. A Tao breaker. That's their mortal enemy. Meanwhile, Yi Jiming spoke abruptly. I support you. With your natural talent, wouldn't it be extremely easy for you to break through the Tao in the future? As soon as she finished speaking, she pulled Yi Xian along and left. A protector of the Grand Tao? No. She hoped that Yi Xian would become a Tao breaker instead. The current Tao Ting and the 3,000 Grand Taos were in chaos, and she didn't want Yi Xian to be swept into it. Granny Meng's God Seal could only be considered as a Shao Dao, but Luan Hui King's Dao wasn't a Shao Dao, it was a true Grand Dao. Moreover, it was a Grand Dao with real power. Once Yi Xian obtained the inheritance of this Grand Dao, he would be completely swept into the disputes of the Tao Ting, and he might even become the enemy of the Tao breakers. How did Luan Hui King die? Yi Xian didn't know, but she did. Luan Hui King had been beaten to death and the current Tao of reincarnation had actually collapsed and it wasn't a complete Tao. It wouldn't be entirely a good thing if Yi Xian accepted the inheritance of the Tao of reincarnation. Just as Yi Jiming was leaving with Yi Xian, Ain suddenly gazed at the black-robed old man. Perhaps you should consider it. This. The black-robed old man was in a difficult position. Ain chuckled. I really should consider it. Her smile was a little strange. The black-robed old man hurriedly said, Young brother, please wait. Yi Xian stopped and turned to look at the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man spoke solemnly. Young brother, to tell you the truth, I knew as soon as I saw you that you're the person I've been waiting for many years. Yi Xian blinked. Senior, didn't you say that I'm not suitable? The black-robed old man smiled embarrassedly. Young brother, I think you're very suitable really. Yi Xian glanced at Ain and smiled. Senior, did you suddenly change your mind because of Miss Ain? The black-robed old man nodded. Yes. Yi Xian looked at Ain and smiled. Looks like Miss Ain isn't as simple as I thought. Ain chuckled. The Tao of reincarnation is ranked in the top 10 of the 3,000 great Taos. Although it's not a complete great Tao, it's at least in the top 30. If you obtain the inheritance of the great Tao of reincarnation and become the guardian of the great Tao of reincarnation, you'll obtain the art of reincarnation, and you'll be able to control the great Tao of reincarnation with a Yang realm body. To put it simply, as long as you're strong enough, you can send a Tao vindication expert into the reincarnation cycle with just a word. Moreover, you can choose whether to send him into the evil or good path. Yi Xian fell silent. Ain looked at the black-robed old man. Don't feel wronged. He inherits the great Tao of reincarnation and he won't disgrace it. If you don't believe me, you can release the mark of God and let him make his own choice. The black-robed old man hesitated, and then he silently chanted. Soon, a mark floated out from between his brows. The mark of God. Yi Xian noticed that it was a red mark of God, different from Meng Po's. Meng Po's mark of God was blue. Obviously the level was different. After the mark of God appeared, it suddenly appeared on top of Yi Xian's head. The next moment, a red light directly enveloped Yi Xian. Yi Xian frowned. This is. Ain smiled. It's observing you. After a moment, the mark of God suddenly trembled, and the red light gradually moved away from Yi Xian. Beside him, the black-robed old man said softly, It seems that little brother is not suitable. At this moment, the mark of God suddenly turned into a red light and entered Yi Xian's body. Seeing this scene, the black-robed old man was stunned. Isn't he not suitable? How? Yi Xian was also a little confused. Just now he felt the rejection of the mark of God, but he didn't expect it to directly choose him. What was going on? Beside him, Ain suddenly said, "Not suitable doesn't mean everything." The black-robed old man looked at Ain and Ain smiled. Just like in the secular world, many times two people are indeed not suitable for each other, but not suitable doesn't mean they can't be together again. The black-robed old man frowned. I don't understand. Beside him, Yi Jiming suddenly said, "It's like a marriage of mutual benefit. For mutual benefit, everyone can be together." Saying so, she looked at Yi Xian. Although he is not suitable for the reincarnation Dao, the reincarnation Dao has chosen him, which means that the reincarnation Dao has chosen him to use him. Yi Xian, Yi Jiming said again, "You can also use it." Beside him, the black-robed old man smiled bitterly. "It's very complicated." Ain looked at the black-robed old man. "No matter what, the reincarnation Dao has made its own choice. You can go in peace." The black-robed old man bowed slightly to Ain. "Take care of yourself." As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian. "Little brother, no matter what, you're the protector of the reincarnation Dao now. Even though you haven't been conferred a title by the Dao Ting, you already have real authority. Remember, enter the reincarnation Dao. Don't let a good person enter the path of evil, and don't let an evil person enter the path of kindness." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "I'll be careful." The black-robed old man nodded, and then his figure gradually became ethereal. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and he said, "Little brother, I have a presumptuous request." Yi Xian said, "Senior, please speak." The black-robed old man said, "I was killed all those years ago and I wasn't able to enter the reincarnation Dao. But this strand of my soul can enter the reincarnation Dao to be reborn. Help me. Right, I want to enter the reincarnation Dao of kindness." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 13-14. All of them had strange expressions on their faces. Yi Xian was speechless as well. This fellow had helped others reincarnate countless times, and now he wanted someone else to help him reincarnate, and he even emphasized that he should enter the virtuous path of reincarnation. Yi Xian thought about it and said, "Senior, what should I do?" The old man nodded. "Summon the seal of samsara." Yi Xian nodded and summoned the samsara divine seal. The black-robed old man looked at the samsara divine seal with a complicated look in his eyes. "Farewell, old friend." He looked at Yi Xian. "Activate its power and open the virtuous path of reincarnation." Yi Xian nodded. He tried to sense the samsara divine seal. Very soon, the samsara divine seal began to tremble slowly. Suddenly, the samsara divine seal erupted with a brilliant green light. The green light was like a door standing in front of everyone. The virtuous path. The old man looked at Yi Xian. "You have to use the power of this seal more often. As for how to use it, you can ask Senior Yi next to you." After saying that, he directly jumped into the door. Bang! The black-robed old man disappeared. Yi Xian put away the seal of samsara, and then he looked at Ain. "Has he reincarnated?" Ain nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian asked solemnly, "Does he still have his memories?" Ain shook his head. "No." Yi Xian frowned. "But I remember that he didn't drink Granny Meng's soup." Ain chuckled. "Because his main soul has shattered and only a strand of his soul is left. Whether this strand of soul can successfully reincarnate is a problem, let alone carry his memories." Yi Xian said solemnly, "If a friend by my side perishes, can I let them use the seal of samsara to reincarnate?" Ain looked at Yi Xian. "In theory, yes, but I advise you not to do that." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" Ain smiled and said, "This thing controls the order of reincarnation and it is particular about fairness and justice. If you use it for yourself, it will leave you. Moreover, even if you want to use it in this way, your friends must die a normal death. To put it simply, don't let their souls be destroyed. If their souls are destroyed or erased, then they won't be able to enter the cycle of reincarnation." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." Ain nodded slightly. "Do you want to learn how to control the samsara seal now?" Yi Xian laughed and said, "Of course." Ain nodded. "Then we'll stay here for half a day. Half a day should be enough for you." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Thank you very much." Then he sat cross-legged on the ground. At this time, Ain pointed at the space between Yi Xian's brows. Soon, countless information flowed into Yi Xian's brain. Reincarnation Divine Art. This reincarnation divine art originated from the reincarnation Great Tao. It was one of the 3,000 Tao techniques and belonged to the category of supernatural powers. Therefore, it could not be compared to Tao scriptures and martial arts. However, Zhou Xian discovered that this reincarnation divine art was truly heaven-defying. It had three major uses. The first was that the reincarnation Great Tao could directly help him reach the peak of the Tao validation realm. The second was that he could use the reincarnation divine art to open the good and evil reincarnation path. Once this art was used, even a Tao validation expert would not be able to resist it. Of course, this depended on one's own strength. If one was strong enough, this reincarnation divine art had almost no limit. In theory, anyone could be sent to the evil path of samsara. However, this was not possible now because the reincarnation Great Tao had collapsed. The reincarnation Great Tao's spirit was actually in a deep sleep because it had been seriously injured. Although it did not die directly, it had fallen into a deep sleep. Now, the reincarnation divine art was only left with its instinctive consciousness. Its true spiritual intelligence was still in a deep sleep. Although the reincarnation spirit was in a deep slumber, its usefulness could not be underestimated. The reincarnation divine art was not something that an ordinary person could block. This was especially true against spirits as it had an innate restraining effect. It could be said that the power of the reincarnation divine art had increased by at least several times in the face of this reincarnation divine art. The third use was immunity. He was immune to all reincarnation divine arts and martial arts. No reincarnation divine art had any effect on him. Zhou Xian still did not use the reincarnation divine art to reach the Tao validation realm. He did not want to use this method to reach the Tao validation realm. This was because the reincarnation divine art was a true external object. If he used it to reach the Tao validation realm and the reincarnation divine art left him in the future, then his own strength would also disappear. At that time it would be a real pain in the ass. Therefore he would use the reincarnation divine art, but he would not rely on it. While Zhou Xian was cultivating, Yi Jiming walked out of the hall and sat on the stone steps. She rested her chin on her hands and looked up at the gloomy sky. No one knew what she was thinking about. At this moment, Ain suddenly walked to Yi Jiming's side and sat down. She smiled. "In person, you are very wary of me." Yi Jiming said indifferently, "I am not wary of you really because I know that you do not have the ability to harm him." She paused, then added, "I do not have that ability either." Ain chuckled. "You mean the person behind him?" Yi Jiming nodded. Ain smiled but did not speak. Yi Jiming looked at Ain. "You are not simple to be able to hide from my third eye." Ain smiled. "That is because your strength has not fully recovered. Otherwise, I would not be able to hide from you." Yi Jiming said in a low voice, "Why are you following him?" Ain asked, "What about you?" Yi Jiming said indifferently, "You should have guessed it." Ain nodded. "Tao scripture. You want to follow him to find the Tao scripture?" Yi Jiming nodded. "Yes." Ain said softly, "Tao scripture." Yi Jiming said, "There is a Tao scripture on you, right?" Ain smiled. "You guessed it wrong. That Tao scripture is useless to me. No, I should say, unless it is the complete version of Tao scripture, it is not of much use to me." "The complete version of Tao scripture," Yi Jiming said softly. "I wonder if there is any hope of collecting all the Tao scriptures." Ain said, "The people of the world of the living are fighting for the Tao scripture." Yi Jiming nodded. "Many." Ain chuckled. "I received news that the Tao stone is in his hands, right?" Yi Jiming looked straight at Ain. "So you are here for the Tao stone?" Ain smiled. "Don't misunderstand, Sanxing is a very good friend of mine." Yi Jiming was silent. Ain turned to look, then said, "I thought Sanxing had followed him here. But I did not expect that. However, I am even more curious about him. For a person with the cause of disaster to be able to survive until now, how strong must the Tao protector behind him be?" Saying this, she looked at Yi Jiming. "I know that there is a person in the world of the living who is not simple. She is the fifth dimension Tendo. Have you seen her?" Yi Jiming nodded. "Yes." Ain smiled. "How strong is she?" Yi Jiming shook his head. "I don't know." Ain blinked. "You can't tell." Yi Jiming nodded. "That woman is very scary." Moon Yanyan was the scariest woman she had ever seen, be it in terms of strength or intelligence. Ain said softly, I really hope I can meet her. Yi Shiming looked at Ain. Who is the best fighter in the world of the dead now? Ain thought for a moment then said, You're giving me a hard time. Yi Shiming asked again, Who are the best fighters in the world of the dead now? Ain smiled. Now it's easy to answer. The first should be the Lord of the Dead. That person's strength had reached the legendary Dao proving realm tens of thousands of years ago. As for now, it's a mystery anyway. The second is that Nanzang Bodhisattva of Buddhism. This person has great faith, great wishes, and his Dharma cultivation is unfathomable. His strength is also a big mystery. Because I haven't seen him fight for almost 10,000 years. The last time he fought was because of that calamity. Yi Shiming was silent for a moment then asked, No more? Ain continued. There are two more. One of them imprisoned himself in the 18 levels of hell, claiming that he will suffer the cruelest torture in the world until his life ends. Unfortunately, he still has at least 100,000 years to live. Moreover, even if his physical body dies, his soul can remain in this world for at least 100,000 years. So if he doesn't regret it, he will continue to be tortured for at least another 200,000 years. What a long time. Yi Shiming said in a low voice, Won't he commit suicide? Ain shook his head. He said that it would be too easy for him. He won't allow himself to die so comfortably. Yi Shiming frowned. What did he do to make him treat himself like this? Ain shook her head. No one knows except that Nanzang guy. Yi Shiming pondered for a moment then asked again, What about the last one? Ain laughed and said, That Dao Lord Green Abyss of the Dao Court is also involved in this matter. His strength is also a mystery because he basically hasn't fought much. Yi Shiming was silent for a moment then said, They are actually the Dao protectors of the great Dao, right? Ain nodded. Yes. They are the protectors of the former order. Yi Shiming frowned. Then why did half of the 3,000 great Dao almost collapse? Did the Dao Ting and these powerful Dao protectors not do anything? Or did they have some internal problems? Ain said softly, They did have some internal problems back then, but in the face of disaster, all problems are not problems. So, they worked together to eliminate all the founders of the current order, those Dao breakers. Speaking of this, she shook her head and smiled, then looked at Yi Shiming. People of Dune, have you ever seen a Dao breaker? Yi Shiming shook his head. I've only heard of it, never seen it. Ain smiled. No wonder. Yi Shiming frowned. What do you mean? Ain looked into the distance and said softly, It's not that they don't want to stop it, but they can't. Every Dao breaker is an existence that can destroy the world, especially those who can break the top 10 great Dao. Such people are unimaginably terrifying. The one in the 18th floor of the underworld is just an ordinary Dao breaker, but if he wants to leave, no one in the underworld can stop him. Speaking of this, she seemed to think of something and suddenly turned to look at the hall. The Dao protector behind him is a Dao breaker, right? Yi Shiming said, I don't know, I haven't seen him. Ain smiled. He should be a Dao breaker, but I don't know what level he is at. If it's just an ordinary Dao breaker. P.S. Everyone tell me, who do you want to see? Chapter 13-15. Half a day later, Yi Xian walked out of the Samsara temple. He looked refreshed and his face was full of smiles. Yi Shiming and Ain looked at Yi Xian. Ain smiled. You succeeded? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Ain smiled. Congratulations, you have 2 types of divine seals. This is rare even in the Dao Ting. Yi Xian whispered, Miss Ain, I heard you talk about the Dao Ting before. What is this Dao Ting? Ain smiled. It's a very powerful force. Everyone in it is the guardians of the great Dao. Yi Xian asked in a low voice, Am I considered a Dao Ting now? Ain smiled. In theory, yes, because you are also a guardian of the great Dao. However, you must be conferred a title by the Dao Ting to be considered a Dao Ting. And I heard Miss Shiming say that you saved the red spider lily on the Bridge of Helplessness. Is that right? Yi Xian nodded. Ain said softly, Then you might not become a member of the Dao court. Yi Xian asked, That woman? Ain smiled. She's not an ordinary woman. She's of high status and has an important position in the Dao Ting. If she doesn't agree, no one will reject her. Yi Xian asked, Does Miss Ain know what she did? Ain nodded. Yes. Yi Xian shook his head. If the Dao Ting are all like that, I won't join them even if they beg me. Ain looked at Yi Xian. That's not right. There are good people in every force, but there are also bad people. In the doubting, there are some with bad intentions, but there are also many who are just. Yi Xian smiled. That's true. But Lady Ain, did no one in the doubting stop her? Ain shook his head. No one will offend her for a mere flower spirit. She paused and looked at Yi Xian. Except for you. Yi Xian smiled. I don't know who she is. Ain chuckled. The cause of evil has been set, it cannot be changed. Yi Xian looked at Ain. Miss Ain, are you also a Dao protector? Ain shook his head. I'm not, but I'm in the doubting circle. Doubting. Yi Xian pondered for a moment before he said, let's go. He didn't forget that he was here for the yellow spring holy water. The three continued on their way. On the way, Ain pointed into the distance. 800 li ahead is the Lotus Sacred Platform. Yi Xian was curious. Lotus Sacred Platform? Yi Jiming suddenly said, that's Nanzang Bodhisattva's place of worship. It specializes in releasing souls from purgatory. Nanzang Bodhisattva. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. He looked around and said, why don't we take a detour? Ain looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I heard you destroyed the realm of pure bliss. Yi Xian blinked. Let's take a detour. Ain shook her head. If we take a detour from here, we'll have to cross Golden Chicken Mountain. It'll take more time to reach Fengdu City. She looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Don't worry about that Nanzang Bodhisattva. It's been a long time since Nanzang Bodhisattva has appeared to release souls from purgatory. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Ain spoke softly. The order of reincarnation has fallen into chaos. Coupled with the fact that not many souls have come to the netherworld, Nanzang Bodhisattva hasn't appeared to release souls from purgatory. So you don't have to worry about encountering him. She shook her head and smiled. In the past, countless souls wanted to encounter Nanzang Bodhisattva. Because once they were released from purgatory by him, then no matter how great their sins were, they would be able to obtain reincarnation. Moreover, if they were fated to obtain the blessing of his dharma and form a good relationship with him, then their future in their next life would be limitless. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, then let's not take a detour. He believed that he wouldn't be so unlucky. The three of them continued on their way, and it didn't take long for Yi Xian to see a lotus platform. It was 27 m tall and a few meters wide. There were a few meditation cushions before it, but they were covered in a thick layer of dust. Moreover, the lotus platform was covered in spiderwebs, and it was obvious that it hadn't been used in a long time. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings of the lotus platform, and it was completely desolate. Ain said softly, a very long time ago this place was extremely prosperous and bustling, and it was one of the rare holy places in the netherworld. Unfortunately, Dao. Yi Xian glanced at the lotus platform and then he said, let's go. Ain nodded. The three of them were about to leave when a ray of Buddhist light suddenly surged out from the lotus platform. The three of them were stunned by this scene. Yi Xian's face darkened. Damn it. Am I really that unlucky? Right when Yi Xian was about to slip away, a monk in a golden kasaya suddenly appeared on the lotus platform, and there was a ray of holy Buddhist light behind the monk. Nanzang Bodhisattva. Yi Xian's expression was slightly unsightly. The Nanzang Bodhisattva before him felt like a vast starry sky, and it was unfathomable. If I were to fight him one-on-one, then it would be quite difficult. Yi Jiming's expression was also somewhat unsightly. This Yi Xian was too unlucky, wasn't he? How many years had it been since this Nanzang Bodhisattva appeared? And this guy appeared as soon as he came? Ain glanced at Nanzang Bodhisattva and didn't speak. Nanzang Bodhisattva looked at Yi Xian and there was a trace of surprise in his eyes. The cause of calamity. Yi Xian was silent. He was thinking, should he fight or run? Or bluff? But this big monk didn't look like he could be bluffed. At this time, Ain suddenly put his palms together and smiled. Nanzang. Nanzang looked at Ain and he smiled. You're here too. Ain nodded. Nanzang said softly, you? Ain smiled but didn't speak. Nanzang smiled. I won't ask any more. Ain said, Nanzang, did you sense something? Nanzang looked at Yi Xian. Spiritual insight, are you a Buddhist disciple? Yi Xian smiled. Not really. Nanzang looked at Yi Xian. I heard that the realm of ultimate bliss was destroyed by a young man, And that young man had a deep relationship with the realm of ultimate bliss, was it you? Yi Xian nodded. It was me. Nanzang smiled. Young man, why did you destroy the realm of ultimate bliss? Yi Xian said, the realm of ultimate bliss wanted to rob my study room and kill me. Nanzang sighed softly. Greed. Saying so, he looked at Yi Xian. I also felt the aura of Wu Wang on you. It seems that he didn't just pass on the Buddhist scriptures to you, he also passed on his Buddhist teachings to you. Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Nanzang looked at Yi Xian. Don't you have anything you want to say to me? Yi Xian thought about it and then said, Buddha said revenge breeds revenge, when will it end? I think let's just forget about this. At the side, Yi Jiming suddenly couldn't help but laugh, but she felt that it was inappropriate, so she forcefully held it in, but it was really difficult to hold it in. At the side, Yin also shook her head. This guy destroyed the realm of ultimate bliss. But now he was telling others to forget about it. How could his skin be so thick? Nanzang looked at Yi Xian. For a moment he was speechless. It was very obvious that this was the first time he met such a person. At this time Yi Xian said again, Nanzang Bodhisattva, Buddhism emphasizes fairness, is this right? Nanzang nodded, yes. Yi Xian looked at Nanzang. When I was being bullied by the realm of ultimate bliss, why didn't Nanzang appear to stop them? Nanzang shook his head. I haven't interfered in the matters of the living world for a long time. Yi Xian asked again, then why is Nanzang blaming me now? Is this fair? Nanzang looked at Yi Xian. You have killed a lot, your sins are a little heavy, I can help you transcend. Yi Xian suddenly said, Nanzang Bodhisattva, do you know about the red spider lily on the bridge of helplessness? Nanzang nodded, I do. Yi Xian smiled. She was innocently tortured for so many lifetimes. Don't her tormentors have heavy sins? Why don't Bodhisattva help her? Nanzang didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled. I know, because she is strong and has an extraordinary identity. Bodhisattva doesn't dare to help her, he doesn't even dare to show mercy and save the red spider lily, right? Nanzang looked at him, still didn't say anything. Yi Xian went on. Buddhists are particular about great kindness and compassion. But it also depends on the person to show mercy, right? Nanzang sighed softly, didn't say anything. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Yin pulled on Yi Xian's sleeve. But Yi Xian couldn't stop, he continued. Nanzang Bodhisattva, you said that if hell is not empty, you will not become a Buddha. But have you ever thought, why is hell not empty? The problem is not in hell but in the world of the living. Why were there so many Tao breakers in the past? Because there is unfairness, and since there is unfairness, there is resistance. Just like the realm of ultimate bliss, they wanted the Tao scriptures, so they came to rob me. Bodhisattva, what do you think of their behavior? Yin pulled on Yi Xian's sleeve again, and Yi Xian glared at Yin. Don't stop me, I want to continue bluffing. Oh no, I want to continue. Saying this, he looked at Nanzang. Buddha says that all living beings are equal, but in my opinion they are not. The senior who taught me Dharma said that all living beings are equal in his heart. I believe this because he has no double standards. Nanzang Bodhisattva. On the side, Yin suddenly pulled on Yi Xian's hand. He said he wants to help you purify some of the evil karma in you. This is a good thing for you. Many people yearn for him to help them transcend. Yi Xian blinked. Doesn't helping me mean to kill me? The corners of Yin's mouth twitched. Who told you that expiation means killing you? Haven't you heard of this saying? When Buddha helps all living beings, he says he wants to help you purify the evil karma in you. Do you understand? Yi Xian looked at Yin. Why didn't you say so earlier? Yin spread his hands. You can't stop yourself. Yi Xian was silent for a long time, then said, What now? I'm a bit embarrassed. Chapter 13:16. At this time Nanzang Bodhisattva suddenly smiled. Actually, what you said is right. Yi Xian looked at Nanzang Bodhisattva. Nanzang Bodhisattva said softly, There are many unreasonable things in this world, just like what you said about the red spider lilies. Saying this, he sighed softly. Yin suddenly said, Nanzang Bodhisattva, don't blame yourself. If it wasn't for you, those two would have disappeared long ago. Nanzang shook his head. We all know that doubting has done wrong, but no one is willing to stand up for it. Saying this, he looked at Yi Xian. On this point we can't compare to you. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Now that woman wants to take revenge on me. Nanzang asked, If you were given a chance to choose again, you would still do the same, right? Yi Xian nodded. Nanzang smiled slightly. Good. Little brother, although you are entangled by the cause of disaster, you have a good heart. No wonder Wu Wang would pass his lifetime inheritance to you. Yin suddenly said, good heart. Saying this, she also glanced at Yi Xian. Nanzang nodded. I am not wrong. Yi Xian said solemnly, Senior, I destroyed the realm of ultimate bliss. Aren't you going to avenge them? Nanzang shook his head. The monks of the realm of ultimate bliss were greedy. They only had themselves to blame for what happened. Moreover, as far as I know, you did not completely destroy the realm of ultimate bliss, but rather you are rebuilding it? Yi Xian nodded. Nanzang smiled. In return, I will recite the Mahayana Diamond Sutra for you. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Can you release the cause of disaster from my body? Nanzang hesitated, then shook his head. I'm afraid not. Yi Xian. Nanzang smiled. However, it can wash away some of the karma and evil thoughts from your body. Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. Thank you. Nanzang nodded slightly and began to silently recite the scripture. Soon, countless golden scriptures floated towards Yi Xian. Soon Yi Xian was directly wrapped up by those golden scriptures, and some of the black lines around him began to slowly turn illusory. At the side, Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian, who was wrapped in scriptures, thinking about something. Yin was also quietly watching Yi Xian and Nanzang in front of him. About 2 hours later, Nanzang stopped, and Yi Xian was surrounded by a ball of Buddhist light. Yi Xian moved his muscles and bones a little. As if he had discovered something, he looked towards Nanzang. Why do I feel so light? At the side, Yin suddenly said, Because some of the messy karma on you has been washed away. There is no cause and no effect, so naturally you are free. Moreover, the soul expiation technique has purified your body, so there isn't a single impurity in your body right now. It'll be even easier for you to charge into the Tao realm. Yi Xian's expression shook, and he looked at Nanzang and pressed his palms together. Thank you. He was quite surprised this time because he hadn't expected that Nanzang wouldn't just not cause trouble for him, he would even help him. Nanzang gazed at Yi Xian. Little brother, I've always believed that good will be rewarded with good, and evil will be repaid with evil. The Buddhas seized your scriptures, so it's understandable that you killed them. On the other hand, you left behind the Buddhist clan's inheritance and helped rebuild the Western paradise. This is a good deed on your part, and I'm helping you today in order to repay this good deed. After today, the enmity between you and the Buddhist clan will be settled. What do you think? Yi Xian glanced at Nanzang and nodded. All right. Nanzang nodded slightly and then he looked at Yin. Take care. As soon as he finished speaking, his body turned illusory, and it didn't take long for him to vanish completely. On the spot, Yi Xian was silent. Yi Jiming suddenly looked at Yin. What would have happened if he had massacred the entire Western paradise? Yin smiled. Then if he doesn't have a trump card today, he won't be able to leave this place. Yi Jiming was silent. Yin said softly, the Buddhist clan's experts seized his study room, and this was an evil deed. In Nanzang Bodhisattva's heart, Yi Xian's killing of them was understandable, and the Buddha's fate was their own fault. However, there are many monks in the Western paradise who study Buddhist Dharma, and these people are innocent. Yi Xian didn't kill them and instead rebuilt the Western paradise. In Nanzang Bodhisattva's heart, this is a good deed, and since it's a good deed, there should be good results. But at this point she stopped. Yi Xian looked at Yin. But what? Yin said softly, you received the inheritance of an enlightened Buddhist monk, and that monk has some connection with Nanzang Bodhisattva. However, he didn't mention this, nor did he give you any advice. This means that he doesn't want to have too much to do with you. Just like he said, you two are even. Yi Xian smiled. I understand. Yin looked at Yi Xian. I can give you a reminder. If you leave now, go back and cultivate well, your future will be limitless. Yi Xian looked at Yin. If I go back now and behave myself, will the underworld let me go? Yin said in a low voice, you can hand over the stone of 3 lives. Hearing this, Yi Jiming frowned. She knew that Yin and the stone of 3 lives were friends. Yin's question was undoubtedly a test for Yi Xian, because Yi Xian didn't know this. Yi Xian looked at Yin and smiled. Miss Yin Sanxing is my friend, I won't hand her over to the underworld. I don't have the right to do so because she isn't one of my possessions. What right do I have to make decisions for her? Yin looked at Yi Xian. After a moment she smiled. I'm relieved that she's with you. Yi Xian frowned. You're the friend Sanxing spoke of. Ain nodded. Yes, I'm her only friend in the underworld and she's my only friend. I came to find you this time because I wanted to see who she had chosen. The reason I was able to find you is because you have her aura on you. I have been with her for over 100,000 years, so I am very familiar with her aura. Then she turned her head and looked into the distance. Go 660 miles and you'll reach Fengdu City. After you enter the city, go to the south of the city. There's a forbidden ground there and it's the Yellow Spring River. There are at least 6 Dao validation experts guarding there. It's impossible for you to enter openly. Yi Xian asked, do you have a way? Ain nodded. She opened her palm and there was a small stone in her hand. This is a soul-concealing stone. Can hide the aura of the soul. You can use this stone to sneak into the Yellow Spring River. As for whether you can get the Yellow Spring holy water, it depends on your luck. Yi Xian took the soul-concealing stone and looked at Ain. You're leaving. Ain nodded. I can't follow you anymore. Saying this, she shook her head with a smile. I overestimated my strength. I thought I could resist the disaster cause on you, but now it seems I can't. I have a strong feeling that if I continue to follow you, I'll be done for. Yi Xian was speechless. Ain continued. Actually, it's not that Nanzang Bodhisattva didn't interfere with the red spider lily you mentioned before, but it didn't work out. That woman's background is much more terrifying than you think. As far as I know, after she found out you saved the red spider lily, she was very, very angry. And when she's angry, the consequences will be very serious. And you're going to get the Yellow Spring holy water. If I continue to follow you, I'm afraid it'll be hard for me to get away. So we can only part here. Yi Xian nodded with a smile. Take care. Ain nodded. If you can go back, remember to tell Sanxing for me. Tell her not to think about attacking the underworld. If she doesn't give up, tell her that I'm fine. I'll find time to visit her. Yi Xian replied, all right. Ain smiled. Take care. Saying this, she turned around and floated into the distance. Before long, she completely disappeared from Yi Xian and Yi Jiming's sight. On the spot, Yi Xian fell silent. Yi Jiming suddenly said, let's go. Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. Yi Jiming looked back at him coldly. What are you trying to say? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Jiming, this trip to Fengdu City will be very dangerous. Yi Jiming stared at Yi Xian. You want me to leave? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. Then he said, you said it, not me. Hearing this, the corners of Yi Jiming's mouth twitched. She shook her head and smiled. You brat, go. Saying this, she walked into the distance. Yi Xian hurriedly followed, then said, Jiming, look, Nanzang is so powerful, but he doesn't want anything to do with me. And this Ain, he's so mysterious, but he doesn't dare to continue following me. I know that the two of them must have sensed that I'm in danger, that's why they did that. You? Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. Since you know it's dangerous, why do you still want to go to Fengdu City? Yi Xian smiled. You know that I'm actually very afraid of death, so I won't do anything that would endanger my life. I'm 90% confident in going to Fengdu City this time. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. Let me go with you. With me around, I can help you a lot. As for the danger, don't worry, I'm 90% confident that I'll be fine on this trip. Yi Xian said in a low voice. You're tricking me. Yi Jiming sneered. You tricked me first. Saying this, she walked into the distance. In the field, Yi Xian sighed softly, then followed her. On the way. Jiming, since when did you treat me as your friend? I've never treated you as a friend. I'm just using you. You hurt me too much by saying that. I'm just using you to find the Tao scriptures, using you to fight against the forces behind me. Jiming, why do you look like a little girl? Can you revert to your original form? You'll definitely be prettier if you revert to your original form, right? Shut up. Why don't you revert to your original form for me to see? Shut up. I'll just take a look. Scram. Chapter 13-17. Fengdu City. Fengdu City was huge and the entire city reeked of yin and death energy. Cold. This was Yi Xian's first impression upon seeing Fengdu City. He had never seen such a cold place before. The entire city reeked of yin and death energy. This was a place that no one could enter. If not for the death zone, he would not be able to adapt to this place. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian turned to Yi Jiming. Jiming, are you all right? Yi Jiming shook his head. I'm fine. Yi Xian nodded. He looked at the city gate of Fengdu City, where there were many spirits floating around. Yi Xian asked softly, Jiming, are you really coming with me? Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. Are you really going? Yi Xian nodded. Yi Jiming said, then I'll go with you. Yi Xian fell silent. Yi Jiming said softly, I'm serious, I can protect myself. Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. You've accompanied me all the way here, it's already very kind of you. You really don't have to risk your life with me, I'm serious. Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. You're afraid of dragging me down and feeling guilty for the rest of your life, right? Yi Xian nodded. After a long silence, Yi Jiming said, without my help, you won't be able to get the Yellow Springs holy water. Saying so, she walked into the distance. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian followed. Using the soul-concealing stone that Ain had given them, they successfully entered Fengdu City. After entering Fengdu City, Yi Xian and Yi Jiming felt uneasy. There were too many ghosts here. Furthermore, some of the spirits had hideous appearances and were extremely ugly to look at. Yi Xian looked around and found that Fengdu City was bustling. There were tall buildings, countless hearses on the streets, and ghosts bustling about. Both sides of the street were lined with all kinds of shops. This wasn't quite the same as what he had in mind. Yi Jiming suddenly said softly, the souls here are probably unable to reincarnate, or perhaps they are ghost cultivators who are focused on cultivating their souls. Yi Xian looked at the Yin souls. Some of the Yin souls were not weak. A few of them were even at the return to origin breaking realm. However, he did not discover any self-release realm cultivators. Clearly, experts at the self-release realm were few and far between in the netherworld. The two of them didn't waste any time and continued forward. Before long, Yi Xian and Yi Jiming arrived at the forbidden area of Fengdu City, the Yellow Spring River. In front of the two of them was a dense forest. Behind this dense forest was the legendary Yellow Spring River. As soon as Yi Xian and Yi Jiming approached the forest, they felt several powerful auras. This powerful aura caused the two's expressions to change. Very strong. Yi Xian's expression was solemn. This place was indeed not simple. Fortunately, he had the soul concealment stone that Ain had given him. Otherwise, he and Yi Jiming wouldn't have been able to get close to this place. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming and sent him a voice transmission, enter the pagoda. Yi Jiming nodded and then he entered the prison pagoda. Yi Xian walked slowly towards the dense forest. Because of the soul concealment stone, he was able to avoid the powerful auras. After entering the forest, Yi Xian noticed that the forest was filled with all sorts of mysterious talismans. These talismans were hung all over the ancient trees and it was very strange. At this moment, Yi Jiming suddenly said, this is the ghost talisman formation. It can see through all concealment techniques in the world. Yi Xian said solemnly, is it useful against my soul concealment stone? Yi Jiming said, no. However, you have to be careful. Don't touch these talismans. Yi Xian nodded and walked slowly towards the distance. During this time, he didn't dare to touch the talismans. He was very clear about his current situation. If he was discovered, who knew how many experts from the netherworld would besiege him? There can't be the slightest mistake. Yi Xian walked slowly and not long later he stopped. Not far in front of him there were many ghosts hanging. These ghosts were nailed to some mysterious ancient trees. From time to time, their bodies would flicker with lightning. Every time lightning flashed, these ghosts would let out miserable shrieks. Yi Xian glanced at the ghosts and said solemnly, these guys aren't here to steal the Yellow Springs holy water, are they? Yi Jiming said, they should be. The netherworld left them here to deter those who came to steal the Yellow Springs holy water. Yi Xian looked at the ghosts and shook his head, how tragic. Saying so, he continued walking. Yi Jiming said, you might also be hung here. Yi Xian's face darkened, I won't. Yi Jiming said, then be careful. Yi Xian nodded, he was even more careful now. This place is really dangerous. I'm really on tenterhooks at every moment. After walking for about a quarter of an hour, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. A few dozen feet in front of him, there was an ancient tree with a bloody head hanging on it. The bloody head had flesh and skin on it, so it was not a ghost. However, Yi Xian discovered that there was a soul imprisoned in that head. Needless to say, this was also a prisoner, but this guy should be stronger than the ones before him. Xian glanced at the head and continued walking. At this time the head slightly raised and looked at Xian's position. Xian's body stiffened and he looked at the head. The head stared back at him and the corner of its mouth curled up into a sinister smile. Xian was silent. Damn it! This person can see me? What the hell? Yiximing said solemnly, get ready to run. Xian nodded. But he knew that if he ran now, only death awaited him. Xian was very calm. What kind of storm had he not been through? Xian looked at the head and the corner of his mouth curled up into a calm smile. The head was slightly taken aback. Why is this guy so calm? Xian walked in front of the head and he sized it up. He didn't speak, very calm and very calm. At this time, a voice suddenly sounded in Xian's mind. You're pretending to be calm. Xian suddenly took out the green-robed man's sword, and he held it in front of the head. Seeing the sword, the head's pupils shrank and he looked at Xian with a trace of disbelief. This sword? Xian smiled but didn't say anything. The head looked at Xian. You Dao breaker? Xian nodded. The head frowned, but I can feel that you're not very strong. Xian frowned and the head's eyelids twitched. He didn't dare to continue. Dao breaker. This kind of person is very, very scary. Xian looked at the head. Why are you imprisoned here? The head said solemnly, Yellow Springs holy water. Xian said in a low voice, you failed. The head glanced at Xian but didn't speak. Xian turned his head, looked into the distance and smiled. To tell you the truth, this venerate came here for the Yellow Springs holy water. The head suddenly said, are you really a Dao breaker? Xian looked at the head and frowned. Do you want to see if this venerate's sword is sharp? As he spoke, he held the sword against the forehead of the head. The head didn't show any fear and it gazed calmly at Xian. Your Excellency, if this sword really is yours, then why do I feel like it isn't one with you? Xian fell silent. This fellow isn't easy to fool. Suddenly, the sword's spirit trembled slightly, and then it transformed into a ray of blood-red light that entered the space between Xian's brows. At this moment he was the sword and the sword was the venerate. The head's expression changed when it saw this scene, and it hurriedly said, Please forgive me if I've offended you just now. At this moment he believed Xian. In his opinion, since the sword could fuse with Xian, it was definitely Xian's sword. Because a sword of this level would absolutely not submit to an outsider. Of course he hadn't imagined that Xian wasn't an outsider in the heart of the sword. Xian's expression was calm as he sized up the head, and then he said, How many years have you been imprisoned here? The head replied in a low voice, 19,000 years. 20,000 years. Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn it. Isn't that a little too cruel? Xian pondered deeply for a moment and said, How about this? I'll rescue you once I'm done. He wanted to pacify this fellow right now and stop it from acting rashly. Otherwise he would really be finished once the experts of the netherworld were drawn over. The head hesitated for a moment before it said, There's no need. A trace of surprise flashed through Xian's eyes. Could it be that you don't want to leave? The head shook its head. To tell you the truth, I already possess the ability to break open the seal within me. However, I'm waiting for them to relax a little before I escape. As he spoke, he gazed towards the distance. According to my observations, these experts of the netherworld would gather during a special festival. The Ghost Festival that occurs once every 100 years. At that time, this place would become much more relaxed and I'm prepared to escape at that time. Xian blinked. The Ghost Festival? The head nodded. The Ghost Festival is in a month. Xian thought for a moment and then he said, Fine, then I won't force you. Take care of yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked towards the distance. Meanwhile, the head suddenly said, Senior, take care as well. Xian grinned and his smile carried a strand of invincible confidence. Don't worry, even if Nanzang, the Lord of the Netherworld, and that Dao Lord Qingming join forces, they won't be able to do anything to me. As soon as he finished speaking, he left in a carefree manner. There was a trace of respect in the eyes of the head behind him. In the distance, Xian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Thank goodness that fellow was dealt with. Otherwise it would have been really dangerous. With his current strength, it wasn't enough for him to do as he pleased in the netherworld. Xian took a deep breath and then he continued forward. Around an hour later, Yi Xian walked out of the dense forest. Outside the dense forest, the dim view of the sky was like a sea of blood at dusk, and it was a beautiful and strange red. Before him was a river that stretched for 150 kilometers. The river flowed with water that was dazzling like mercury, and it was pleasing to the eye at first glance. There was a stone tablet by the river, and there were 2 lines of words on it. Yellow Spring River, Yellow Spring River. At the sight of this river, yin and yang are separated. Previous life. This life. Everything was futile. P.S. Asking for votes. I ask for it every day for an entire day. Chapter 13:18. Yellow Spring River. This was Yi Xian's first time seeing the Yellow Spring River. He had to admit that he was shocked. The river water was like mercury, sparkling under the light. At a glance it was like a galaxy. Yi Jiming's voice suddenly rang in Yi Xian's mind. The Yellow Spring holy water should be at the bottom of the Yellow Spring River, but you must be mentally prepared. Yi Xian was puzzled. What do you mean? Yi Jiming said, do you see the Yellow Spring River? This water will corrode your body. I'm not sure if your body can withstand the water of the Yellow Springs. Yi Xian looked at the Yellow Spring River and chuckled. We'll know after we try. Then he walked toward the Yellow Spring River. At this moment, a powerful aura suddenly swept over the Yellow Spring River. Yi Xian's expression turned cold. What a powerful aura. It seemed like there was a super expert guarding this place. Yi Jiming said, that person is at least at the peak of Dao Vindication Realm. Yi Xian nodded. The netherworld was not simple. From the looks of it, the Yang world was definitely weaker than the netherworld. After confirming that the mysterious expert had left, Yi Xian walked down the Yellow Spring River. However, as soon as he entered the river, he frowned and retracted his right foot. Pain. When he stepped in, it was like being pricked by thousands of needles. It was excruciating. Yi Xian was shocked. Even self-release realm experts couldn't injure his body, but it couldn't block the Yellow Spring River. This was a bit troublesome. Yi Jiming said, the Yellow Spring holy water should be at the bottom of the Yellow Spring River. You can't use sword intent or other powers to force your way in. You can only go in slowly and your body. Yi Xian grinned. It's fine. I can hold on. Then he walked down the Yellow Spring River. As soon as he entered the Yellow Spring River, Yi Xian couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. This was too damn painful. The Yellow Spring River couldn't destroy his body, but his body couldn't completely block the corrosive power of the Yellow Spring either. Simply put, he wouldn't die, but he would be in great pain. A life worse than death. Yi Xian clenched his fists. He took a deep breath and continued forward. Just like that, Yi Xian slowly walked into the distance. When he completely entered the Yellow Spring River, he truly understood what it meant to be in so much pain that he wished he was dead. That kind of corrosive pain was really not something that a human could endure. Most importantly, he couldn't use his power to resist the corrosive power. Otherwise, with his strength, he could use his sword intent to resist the nether water. However, he couldn't do that now. If he rushed to release his sword intent now, he would be courting death. Yi Xian clenched his fists and quickened his pace. Within the prison pagoda, Yi Jiming watched on. At this moment, the Yi Xian in front of her gave her a strange feeling. The guy in front of her usually laughed and looked very unreliable, but at this moment she suddenly realized that this guy actually had a lot of good points. His will was firm and he could endure what ordinary people couldn't. She could feel the pain that Yi Xian was experiencing. This pain was definitely worse than death by 1,000 cuts. But this guy could actually endure it. After a long time, Yi Jiming sighed softly. In the Yellow Spring River, Yi Xian slowly walked towards the depths of the Yellow Spring River. After walking for about an hour, he suddenly realized that not only was his physical body being corroded, but his soul was also being corroded. Both his soul and physical body were being corroded. When his soul started to be corroded, Yi Xian's expression changed. He could endure the corrosion of his physical body, but when his soul was being corroded, he panicked a little. The pain of his soul being corroded was at least 10 times worse than the pain of his physical body. Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. At this moment, Yi Jiming suddenly said, "Let's go back." Yi Xian took a deep breath and grinned. "Since I'm already here, how can I give up halfway?" Saying that, he continued forward. But now it was different. Every step he took was extremely difficult, as if it weighed 1,000 tons. It was really too painful. His soul and physical body were being corroded, and he couldn't use his own strength to resist the corrosive force. In this river, even the slightest fluctuation of energy would consign him to eternal damnation. Gritting his teeth, Zhou Xian walked step by step towards the depths of the Yellow Spring River. But now his consciousness was starting to blur. Every time his consciousness was about to fade, he would bite the tip of his tongue, and the sharp pain would make him a little more clear-headed. In the prison pagoda, Yi Jiming asked softly, "Is it worth it?" Zhou Xian didn't answer Yi Jiming. He only wanted to reach the depths of the Yellow Spring River as soon as possible. About an hour later, Zhou Xian suddenly stopped. At this moment his face was extremely pale, and his body was trembling as if he was convulsing. But there was a trace of excitement on his face. He had reached the end. Not far in front of him there was a huge runic array. In the center of the runic array there was a small green bottle. Within the small bottle there was a dark gray liquid. Yi Xian said in a trembling voice, "Jiming, is that the Yellow Spring holy water?" Yi Jiming was silent for a moment, then said, "The liquid is dark gray, symbolizing the soul and death. This is the Yellow Spring holy water." Yi Xian was about to go over, but as if he thought of something he hurriedly stopped. Formation. There was a powerful formation at the bottom of the Yellow Spring River. Apart from the formation he also felt a powerful aura. There was an expert guarding it. Damn it! The Netherworld actually sent so many experts to protect the Yellow Spring holy water. Yi Xian tried to calm himself down. After a moment he said in a low voice, "Jiming, can you feel where that expert is?" Yi Jiming said, "100 zhang to the right." Yi Xian looked to the right. 100 zhang away there was nothing there. Yi Jiming said, "He's hiding in the dark." Yi Xian fell silent. "What should I do? If I touch the Yellow Spring holy water I'm sure I'll be discovered." For a moment Yi Xian fell silent. Yi Xian was also silent. Yi Xian was in a dilemma. If he wanted to take the Yellow Spring holy water he would definitely alarm the experts here. If he left now Yi Xian would definitely be unwilling. It really wasn't easy for him to come here. At this time Yi Jiming suddenly said, "I have to make a decision." Yi Xian looked at the Yellow Spring holy water. After a long silence he said, "Jiming, can you help me avoid this formation?" Yi Jiming was silent. Yi Xian smiled bitterly, "I'm too unwilling to leave now." Yi Jiming said, "Give me some time." Yi Xian nodded. He looked at the Yellow Spring holy water in the distance, thinking about something. Roughly 15 minutes later Yi Jiming suddenly said, "This is an ancient godly talisman array, specifically used to imprison people. If you were to disturb it you'll be imprisoned immediately. However, if there's no energy fluctuation, it won't be activated. So you only have one choice later, and that is to take the Yellow Spring holy water by force and immediately escape. But doing so will alarm the experts here. If you don't have a plan, you won't be able to take the Yellow Spring holy water away." Yi Xian nodded, "I understand." With that he slowly closed his eyes. "Big sister, can I use the Tao of Space?" Tao of Space. He didn't forget the Tao of Space in the pagoda. These Tao of Space were not just for show, they were just not used at the right time. It was worth mentioning that his greatest trump card was not the Tao scriptures or martial arts, but the World Prison Pagoda. His current body could already withstand most of the power of the World Prison Pagoda. Moments later, Big Sister's voice suddenly resounded in Yi Xian's mind. Although the space here is reinforced by the formation, there are no grand Tao laws. So, you can use the Tao of Space to forcefully move yourself in the Yellow Spring holy water away. However, I have to remind you that there are many experts here, and I'm afraid there are experts who can forcefully seal off space. Once such experts make a move, it will be very difficult for you to escape from the Netherworld. Yi Xian nodded, "I understand." With that he slowly walked towards the green bottle. There were at least 20 drops of Yellow Spring holy water in the bottle. 20 drops. This was a sacred item that the Netherworld had accumulated for many years. At this moment Yi Jiming suddenly said, "I know that you don't do things that you're not confident in. What trump card do you have?" Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, then he smiled, "What trump card do I have? It's just pure guts." With that, the Tao of Space suddenly condensed between his eyebrows. At the moment the Tao of Space appeared, a furious shout suddenly resounded from the depths of the Yellow Spring River. "How dare you! As soon as the voice resounded, a powerful aura suddenly shook from the depths of the Yellow Spring River. In an instant the entire Yellow Spring River shook violently. At this moment Zhou Xian and the bottle of Yellow Spring holy water disappeared. Teleportation. At the moment when Zhou Xian disappeared, an old man with a walking stick suddenly appeared where Zhou Xian was. When he saw Zhou Xian disappear, the old man was slightly stunned. In the next moment his face turned ferocious and he suddenly stomped his right foot, turned into a black light and disappeared. After Zhou Xian left the Yellow Spring River, he directly appeared in the dense forest from before. Zhou Xian was stunned. Why am I still in this forbidden area? Meanwhile, the big sister said in a low voice, there's an extremely powerful restriction in the space of this forbidden area, and the Tao of space can't break it. So, Zhou Xian's face darkened. So I can only teleport in this forbidden area? The big sister said, yes. The corners of Zhou Xian's mouth twitched. At this moment he turned around and his expression changed drastically in the next moment. They found me. What should I do? Zhou Xian fell silent for a moment and was about to leave when a voice resounded from the side. Senior. Zhou Xian turned around and saw that it was the mysterious head he'd encountered earlier. The head gazed at Zhou Xian and said excitedly, Senior, did you succeed? Zhou Xian blinked. Then he said, how can I fail if I attack with my own body? As he spoke he took out the green bottle that contained the Yellow Spring holy water. The head's face was filled with admiration. I admire you. Zhou Xian suddenly said, do you want to kill our way out? The head blinked and said, kill our way out? Zhou Xian roared with laughter, of course we're going to kill our way out. How about it? Do you dare to kill our way out with me? The head was in a difficult position. He would be able to sneak out in another month, so it would be too risky if he were to break free now. Zhou Xian roared with laughter, how can cultivators like us be afraid? If you have the guts, then break free right now and kill our way out of the netherworld with me. Kill our way out of the netherworld. The head's blood boiled when he heard that, but he was still slightly worried. Senior, the Lord of the Netherworld. Zhou Xian waved his hand and smiled, the Lord of the Netherworld is nothing. If he dares to attack, then I'll obliterate his soul today. I'll only ask you one thing. Do you dare to kill our way out of the netherworld with me? If you do, then I might even give you some good fortune. The head fell silent for a few breaths of time before he spoke fiercely, damn it. Let's do it. As soon as he finished speaking, bang! A powerful aura suddenly burst forth from the battlefield. Chapter 13:19. The head in front of Zhou Xian started to tremble violently, and it didn't take long for a body to actually grow out at a visible speed. At this moment, the old man holding a crutch at the bottom of the river suddenly appeared not far from Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's eyelids twitched when he witnessed this scene, but his expression was very calm. The old man gazed at Zhou Xian. How interesting. A self-release realm cultivator actually dared to come and steal the Yellow Spring's holy water. Zhou Xian glanced at the old man and smiled without saying a word. His smile carried deep meaning. The old man frowned slightly when he witnessed this scene. Could it be that this fellow has something to rely on? As if he'd thought of something, he suddenly gazed at the man by Zhou Xian's side. Wuxia, you're on his side. The man who'd just regrown his body roared with laughter. Immerse, I'm on the same side as this senior. Senior. The old man called Immerse gazed at Zhou Xian, and his brows knit together slightly. You called him senior. Wuxia smiled. Immerse, it's not too late for you to flee now. Really? Immerse took a deep and long glance at Zhou Xian. Who exactly are you? At this moment he felt quite fearful in his heart. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for a self-release realm cultivator to come here. Moreover, he was clearly aware of Wuxia's strength, yet Wuxia had actually called this fellow senior. It wasn't simple at all. Meanwhile, Wuxia stretched his body, and then he gazed at Zhou Xian and smiled. Senior, should I kill this fellow? Zhou Xian glanced at Immerse. He isn't worthy of me making a move against him. Just kill him. Wuxia was stunned and then he smiled, all right. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly turned around to gaze at Immerse, and then he smashed his fist forward. His fist smashed forward and a black fist swept forward. Wuxia's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't dare act carelessly in the slightest, and he tapped his walking stick forward lightly. In an instant, A black shield appeared in front of him. Meanwhile, the fist smashed directly against the black shield. Bang! Along with an explosion, Yimu Chun retreated explosively by almost 300 m. Yi Xian glanced at Wu Xian beside him. This guy was a little fierce. This fellow was definitely an expert at the pinnacle of the Tao-proving realm. Wu Xian was about to attack again, but at this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Let's go." After he finished speaking, he turned around and transformed into a sword light, disappearing into the distance. Wu Xian stared blankly for a moment, then hurriedly followed. Yi Xian's speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he left the forbidden area of the underworld. When he appeared in Fengdu City, 3 extremely powerful auras suddenly enveloped him. Yi Xian's expression darkened. 3 self-release realm experts. At this time, Wu Xian suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Senior." Yi Xian nodded slightly. At this time, 4 people appeared in front of them, 2 old men and 2 middle-aged men. Wu Xian said solemnly, "The 4 revelations, the 4 old farts in charge of guarding the Yellow Spring River." Yi Xian looked at Wu Xian. "Can you defeat the 4 of them?" Wu Xian blinked. "Fight 4?" Yi Xian nodded. "Of course." Wu Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, "I can fight too, but 4. This." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." Wu Xian hurriedly said, "The 4 of them shouldn't be a match for a single sword strike from Senior, right?" Yi Xian smiled proudly. "How many people in this world can take a sword strike from me?" Wu Xian felt deep veneration. "Who in this world can take a sword strike from me? How many years has it been since I've heard such bold words?" At this moment, Yimu Chun, who was the leader of the 4 revelations, suddenly said, "Who exactly are you?" In their perception, Yi Xian was at the self-release realm, but they were slightly doubtful. A self-release realm expert dared to be so arrogant? It didn't make sense. Yi Xian glanced at Yimu Chun. "Are you worthy of my sword? Call the Lord of the Nether Realm out." Hearing this, Wu Xian, who was next to Yi Xian, was stunned, and then he hurriedly looked at Yimu Chun. "Yimu Chun, hurry up and call your Lord of the Nether Realm out. Hurry up." At this moment, Wu Xian's back was ramrod straight. His thigh is thick. The feeling of hugging a thigh is really not bad. Opposite Yi Xian, Yimu Chun stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "Someone like you is worthy of seeing my Lord of the Nether Realm?" Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm and the sword spirit appeared in his hand. When they saw this sword, Yimu Chun and the others' expressions changed. They weren't sure if Yi Xian was strong, but this sword really wasn't simple. This was clearly a sword of the Tao-breaking realm. Could it be that this fellow in front of them was a Tao-breaking expert? At this thought, Yimu Chun and the others couldn't help but turn pale. Yimu Chun looked at Yi Xian and then he hesitated. "Your Excellency, who exactly are you?" Yi Xian didn't answer and he just slowly closed his eyes. "Ximing, take advantage of the chaos and leave with the Yellow Spring's holy water." Yi Ximing said solemnly. "What about you?" Yi Xian said, "I have a way to escape." Yi Ximing still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said softly, "Please." Yi Ximing said, "All right." Yi Xian looked at Yimu Chun and smiled. "What, am I not worthy of seeing your Lord of the Nether Realm?" Yimu Chun said solemnly, "Your Excellency is a Tao breaker?" A Tao breaker. An expert of this level wasn't just terrifying, it was extremely terrifying. It could be said that a Tao-confirming expert was practically powerless before a Tao-breaking expert. One was a Tao-confirming expert, the other a Tao-breaking expert. The difference between them was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. Yi Xian didn't speak, but Wu Xian suddenly laughed. "Of course Senior is a Tao breaker. Yimu Chun, you didn't expect this, right? Don't waste your breath. Quickly call your Lord of the Nether Realm out and let him fight Senior." A Tao breaker. Yimu Chun and the others' expressions became slightly unsightly when they heard Wu Xian's words. A Tao breaker. Such an expert wasn't someone they could resist. Right at this moment, a shapeless pressure suddenly smashed down from the sky. In next to no time, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared above them. The middle-aged man wore a white robe, and he didn't just wear a white robe, even his hair was white. Yimu Chun and the others bowed slightly to the middle-aged man. Gehenna Monarch. Gehenna Monarch. The Lord of Necropolis City held an extremely high position in the Nether Realm, and he only obeyed the orders of the Lord of the Nether Realm. Gehenna monarch looked at Yi Xian. You're Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Inmu Chun and the others' expressions became slightly unsightly when they heard Gehenna monarch. They naturally knew who Yi Xian was. Isn't he that fellow who possesses the Dao stone? What's he doing here? That wasn't the main point. The main point was that they'd actually been intimidated by this fellow. The gazes of Inmu Chun and the others gradually turned gloomy when they thought up to this point. On the other hand, Wu Xin, who stood by Yi Xian's side, was quite stunned. What the hell? Suddenly Yi Xian opened his palm and the pagoda appeared. At the same time Yi Jiming appeared as well. Yi Xian placed the pagoda in Yi Jiming's hand. Let's go. Go. Meanwhile, Gehenna monarch spoke indifferently. Yi Xian, do you think she can leave? Yi Xian smiled as he gazed at Yi Jiming. Let's go. Yi Jiming stared at Yi Xian. Come back alive. With that she turned around and left. Gehenna monarch clenched his right hand in the direction of Yi Jiming, and a powerful Yin soul energy locked onto the area where Yi Jiming was. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly roared, Mu Sheng. Gehenna monarch frowned slightly. At this moment a crack suddenly appeared in the sky, and in the next moment, a powerful force swept down from the sky. Gehenna monarch's expression changed. Dao world, don't you dare. As soon as he finished speaking he blasted out a punch. Boom. A powerful force shot into the sky, and at this moment an afterimage suddenly appeared in the sky. The afterimage flashed down like a bolt of lightning, and in an instant, Gehenna monarch's power was directly destroyed. At the same time, Gehenna monarch retreated explosively for hundreds of meters. The entire Fengdu city shook. When Fengdu city regained its peace, Mu Xing appeared in front of Yi Jiming and Yi Xian. She grabbed Yi Xian and Yi Jiming with both hands and soared into the sky. However, at this moment, a mysterious force suddenly swept towards them from below. Mu Xing frowned slightly. Hades. At this moment an afterimage rushed up from below. It was Gehenna monarch. The two monarchs of the underworld. Yi Xian suddenly said, Take her and leave. As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a ray of sword light and charged down. Below, Gehenna monarch's eyes narrowed slightly, and he punched out to meet Yi Xian's sword light. Boom. The sword light shattered, and Yi Xian retreated explosively for nearly 300 meters. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, the space behind him turned into nothingness. His body had withstood this powerful force, but the space behind him couldn't. Fortunately, Yi Jiming and Mu Xing had disappeared. Gehenna monarch looked at Yi Xian. Hades, go after Mu Xing. As soon as he finished speaking, a Yin spirit disappeared at the end of the sky. Gehenna monarch looked at Yi Xian. I underestimated your strength. As expected of someone who possesses the Dao scripture and the Dao stone. At such a young age you actually have such ability. However, you overestimate yourself a little. How dare you come to my underworld to steal the Yellow Spring holy water? What do you call this? This is self-destruction. As soon as he finished speaking, some experts appeared around him. A total of 10 Dao validation experts came. These 10 people were the 10 ghost emperors of the underworld. The battle between Mu Xing and Gehenna monarch just now was too big, so most of the experts of the underworld rushed to Fengdu city. Just now there were no less than 15 Dao validation experts in the field. Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, Wu Xin suddenly said in a trembling voice, Senior. Yi Xian looked at Wu Xin and Wu Xin stared at Yi Xian gulping, Senior, you're a Dao breaker, right? Yi Xian spread his hands. I also want to be, but unfortunately I'm not. But Wu Xin suddenly collapsed. Why do you want to harm me like this? I can sneak out in 1 month. 1 month. You tricked me into killing our way out with you. I actually believed you. I'm really the biggest idiot in history. I'm an idiot. I can't beat a dozen Dao validation experts. I can't beat them. You big liar. You goddamn liar. At this point he actually wailed like a child. Although he did not cry, there was a sense of sorrow. It was very miserable. P.S. The winner of the vote gets the blue wand. 1 vote per day, 1 vote for 1 day. Chapter 1320. At this moment Wu Xin was indeed sullen. After being trapped for more than 20,000 years, he originally had a chance to escape, but he chose to listen to this fellow's words and escaped ahead of time. Now great. What should he do now that the experts of the netherworld had gathered? What to do? Thinking of this, Wu Exin could not help but feel sorrow in his heart. The experts of the netherworld revealed extremely strange expressions as well. They naturally knew who Wu Exin was. This guy had also come to steal the Yellow Springs holy water in the past, but he didn't succeed. His physical body was severed by the Lord of the Underworld and he was sealed in the forbidden area, suffering the pain of the Yin wind cutting his soul. It was just that they did not expect that this fellow could actually break the seal and escape. All the experts of the nether dimension were slightly shocked because that seal was personally placed by the Lord of the nether dimension all those years ago. To the side, Yi Xian glanced at Wu Exin who was still wailing. He couldn't bear it in his heart. "Senior, calm down first." Wu Exin raised his head to look at Yi Xian. He just stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian felt a little uncomfortable being stared at by him. Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. "Senior, we can still kill our way out." "Kill our way out?" Wu Exin looked at Yi Xian and said angrily, "There are already 20 Dao Vindication cultivators here. Senior, how many are you planning to fight?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before raising a finger. Wu Exin stared blankly. 10. Yi Xian quickly shook his head. Wu Exin flew into a rage. "Do you want me to fight 19? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Then I'll fight too. You can fight 18 of them." Wu Exin angrily pointed at Yi Xian. He was so angry that he couldn't speak. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Senior, I can only fight 2 at most. Moreover, it's a little difficult to fight both of them." Thoughtless looked at Yi Xian. "Big brother, my dear big brother, I don't understand. You, a self-release realm cultivator, came to steal the Yellow Springs holy water? What right do you have to steal the Yellow Springs holy water?" Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, "How bold." Wu Exin angrily said, "Your guts are fat, very fat. Laozi has never seen your guts so fat. But why did you lie to me? You want me to come out early? Do you know that I can leave the netherworld in a month's time?" Yi Xian glanced at Wu Exin and said helplessly, "I didn't plan on calling you but you stopped me. I asked if you wanted to kill your way out and then you agreed." Wu Exin said angrily, "You told me that you are a Dao breaker. You said that no one in the underworld is your match." Yi Xian shrugged. "I was bragging. Senior, don't tell me you've never bragged before." Wu Exin was so angry that he almost died on the spot. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly walked in front of Wu Exin. He opened his palm and in the center of his palm, there was a dark gray drop of water. "Yellow Springs holy water." Wu Exin was stunned. Yi Xian said, "Senior, you have been trapped for so many years, your soul must have been seriously injured. Come drink it." Wu Exin looked at Yi Xian with some uncertainty. "For me." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Don't look. Drink it quickly." Wu Exin quickly took the Yellow Springs holy water and drank it. The moment he drank it, a powerful soul aura swept out of his body. The soul aura made the entire Fengdu city tremble. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. "Isn't this Yellow Springs holy water too abnormal?" At this moment the surrounding underworld powerhouses all looked at Wu Exin. Gehenna King's gaze also fell on Wu Exin. It should be said that his focus has always been on Wu Exin. The people of the underworld knew little about Wu Exin's origin and strength, but they knew that Wu Exin was not ordinary. Back then the Lord of the Underworld personally took action to suppress this guy. Wu Exin greedily took a deep breath, clenched his fists and in an instant, a soul fluctuation shook the surroundings. Powerful soul power. But at this moment, there were nearly 30 Dao Validation Realm powerhouses present. Seeing this lineup, Yi Xian fell silent. "How can I get out? I definitely can't beat them. It's useless to bluff." As if thinking of something, Yi Xian turned to look at Wu Exin. Sensing Yi Xian's gaze, Wu Exin immediately looked at him with an unfriendly expression. "What bad ideas are you up to now?" "Yi Xian." At this moment, Gehenna King suddenly said, "Wu Exin, the Lord of the Underworld didn't kill you back then because he cherished talent. If you are willing to join the Underworld, all the past grievances will be settled. What do you think?" Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. He glanced at Wu Exin. "Damn, this guy won't join the Underworld, will he?" Wu Exin did not answer Gehenna King. Instead he looked at Yi Xian and chuckled. "Are you panicking? I'm asking you, are you panicking?" Yi Xian looked at Gehenna King. "Can I surrender as well?" The corners of Wu Xian's mouth twitched. Fuck. The experts of the underworld looked at each other. Damn it, what kind of weirdo is this? Are the people of the Yang realm all so amusing? Gehenna King looked at Zhou Xian and smiled. Surrender? That's fine too. But you have to hand over one of your souls and one spirit. One soul and one spirit. At the side, Wu Xian looked at Zhou Xian and sneered. Handing over one soul and one spirit was equivalent to becoming someone else's dog. If someone told you to go left, then you couldn't go right. Zhou Xian thought for a moment and said, "Can I go back and think about it?" As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and ran. Wu Xian was dumbfounded. Zhou Xian ran very quickly because he used the space Dao law. In the blink of an eye, he vanished from Fengdu City. Gehenna King was expressionless. He didn't give chase, and the experts of the underworld didn't attack either. 2 breaths later, Zhou Xian reappeared at his original position. Wu Xian looked at Zhou Xian and said with a smile, "Oh, great hoodwinker, why are you back again?" Zhou Xian's expression turned a little ugly. Damn it, there's something wrong with Fengdu City. When he tried to use the space Dao law to escape this place, he realized that the space here was like a maze. So, after going around for a while, he returned here again. There was a spatial array here. Gehenna King looked at Zhou Xian. "Do you want to continue running?" Zhou Xian suddenly said, "Why aren't you guys making a move? What are you waiting for?" Gehenna King did not say anything and turned to look at the horizon. At the intersection of the Yang realm and the Yang realm, Mu Xing stopped with Yi Jiming. Behind the two of them was a dark shadow. Mu Xing turned around and looked at the approaching dark shadow. "You go first," Yi Jiming said in a low voice. "What about him?" Mu Xing was expressionless. "I only promised to help him once and he asked me to save you." Yi Jiming fell silent. Mu Xing looked at Yi Jiming. "He stayed there on purpose. His hatred is too great. If he leaves with us, all the powerhouses in the Yang realm will join forces to keep us here. Do you understand?" Yi Jiming did not say anything. He turned around and ran. Mu Xing turned to look at the dark shadow with a cold gaze. Underworld scum. With that, she turned into a black light and disappeared on the spot. Boom. Suddenly, the intersection of the Yang realm and the Yang realm shook violently. Fengdu City. Gehenna King suddenly retracted his gaze and looked at Zhou Xian. "You're very capable to be able to get the Dao realm to help you." Zhou Xian chuckled. "Looks like she's safe now." Gehenna King turned to look at Wu Xian. "What do you think of my suggestion?" Wu Xian laughed. "If I had been willing to bow my head back then, I wouldn't have been imprisoned for 20,000 years. As for now, if I surrender, wouldn't I have been imprisoned for 20,000 years in vain?" At the side, Zhou Xian immediately gave him a thumbs up. "Good job, senior." Wu Xian glared at Zhou Xian angrily. "Shut up." Zhou Xian was speechless. Gehenna King glanced at Wu Xian and nodded. "Since that's the case, then you can die here." With that, he turned into a black light and charged at Wu Xian. Wu Xian laughed. "Come on. Let me see if you've improved over the years." With that, he also charged out. The underworld powerhouses looked at Zhou Xian. Inmu Chun, who was the leader, suddenly said, "Kill him." More than 20 Dao-proving realm powerhouses dashed towards Zhou Xian as soon as they finished speaking. How terrifying was it when over 20 Dao validation powerhouses attacked in unison. However, Zhou Xian's expression was extraordinarily calm and he slowly closed his eyes. When the Dao validation powerhouses arrived before him, Zhou Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. "Die." As soon as he spoke, he suddenly clenched his fists, crisscrossed his arms, and then held them horizontally in front of him. In an instant. Rumble. A destructive force suddenly erupted from Fengdu City, and the more than 20 Dao validation realm powerhouses who were charging at Zhou Xian were pushed back nearly 10,000 feet. Not only that, but the entire Fengdu City began to crumble. Gehenna King and Wu Xian suddenly stopped, and then they turned to look at where Zhou Xian stood with a trace of shock in their eyes. Gehenna King didn't attack Wu Xian again. Instead, he suddenly clenched his right hand. Suppress. As soon as he spoke, countless specters condensed in Necropolis, and the city that was on the verge of shattering gradually calmed down under the suppression of the specters. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian was nowhere to be seen. He ran. Gehenna King's face became ferocious. "Trying to escape? You're dreaming." As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly closed his eyes, and a short moment later he suddenly smashed his right fist towards the right. Xian threw a punch. There was no disturbance in the space where his punch landed. However, on a hill thousands of miles away, Xian suddenly stopped. His expression changed drastically and he raised his arms to block the attack. Bang! A powerful force suddenly erupted from the space in front of him, and Xian instantly retreated by over 1 kilometer. As soon as he stopped, the space in front of him suddenly trembled, and then Gehenna King and all the experts from the nether dimension appeared in front of him. Wuxia appeared by Xian's side as well. Gehenna King looked at Xian. I underestimated you. Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and then he looked at Wuxia in confusion. You're not going to escape? Wuxia was expressionless. Do you think I can escape? As he said this, he paused for a moment before continuing. What was that move you used just now? Looked very powerful. Xian blinked. It's a martial art I created. It's called Seeking Death. What do you think? Wuxia looked at Xian. The name is very domineering, but are you sure you created it yourself? Xian nodded. I created it myself. Wuxia shook his head. If you created it yourself, I'll eat 10 kilograms of dung and it'll be diluted. Xian was speechless. Wuxia suddenly said, Kid, I don't think you're an ordinary person. Since you dared to steal the yellow spring holy water, you must have some trump card, right? Xian nodded. I do. Wuxian's eyes lit up. What trump card? Take it out and beat them to death. Xian looked at Wuxia. My helpers are in the world of the living. You help me stall them and I'll go to the world of the living to get reinforcements. Then I'll come back to save you. What do you think? Wuxia glanced at Gehenna King and the others. He thought for a moment before saying, I understand. Your trump card is that you go first and I'll bring up the rear, right? Xian was speechless. Chapter 1321. At this moment, there were already 36 Dao-proving experts on the hill. 36. Some of them were the guardians of the Grand Dao. Even Xian felt like surrendering when he saw such a lineup. Wuxia suddenly said, Kid, do you really not have any trump cards? He still thought that Xian had a trump card. A self-release expert coming to steal the Yellow Springs holy water? This shouldn't be just guts, right? He was gutsy in the past, but not to this extent. Trump card. King of Gehenna suddenly said with a smile. Xian, actually, I'm also very curious. What made you dare to steal the Netherworld holy water? Xian smiled. Gehenna King, you are the Fengdu city lord. I heard that your strength is only second to the lord of the underworld. With that, he took out the executing heaven sword. I want to spar with you. Let's make this clear, we will fight one-on-one, fair duel, no gang fights. Gehenna King looked at Xian. Challenge me? Xian nodded. One-on-one. Gehenna King nodded. All right. With that, the surrounding underworld experts retreated 3 kilometers away. The underworld believed in the strong. Gehenna King was challenged in public, so he had to accept because it would damage his dignity, especially when the other party was only at the self-release realm. Beside Xian, Wuxia glanced at Xian and then retreated to the side. He didn't choose to run because at least 10 underworld experts had locked onto him. Opposite Xian, Gehenna King was expressionless. Draw your sword. Xian nodded and suddenly disappeared. Gehenna King looked at Xian, who was charging at him, with a calm expression. He didn't look down on him because he wouldn't look down on any opponent, but he didn't pay too much attention either. The person in front of him wasn't enough for him to pay attention to. When Xian appeared a few dozen feet in front of Gehenna King, a divine seal appeared between his brows. Samsara divine seal. The moment the divine seal of Samsara appeared, Xian's aura skyrocketed. The Dao-proving realm. At this moment, Xian used the Samsara God Seal and the God Seal that Granny Meng had given him to reach the Dao Vindication realm. In addition, the 3 domains suppressed Gehenna King. Not only that, but the World Prison Pagoda also appeared above Gehenna King's head, and 9 different colored beams of light enveloped Gehenna King. Dao Law Suppression. Sword Domain Suppression. Proving one's own Dao. At this moment, Xian directly used all his trump cards. Because he knew that he only had one chance against Gehenna King. Slowly fight with the opponent and then reveal his trump card when the fight reaches a certain point. That wouldn't do because he wouldn't be able to outlast him. Moreover, that would waste too much time. What's the point of delaying a fight? If you want to fight, then fight with your life. At the instant that Zhou Xian utilized all his trump cards, the expressions of everyone in the surroundings had changed, including the King of Hell. He hadn't imagined that Zhou Xian was actually a guardian of the Grand Tao as well. Moreover, Zhou Xian possessed 2 types of God seals. Most importantly, Zhou Xian actually possessed 3 domains. Moreover, this attack of Zhou Xian's was very unusual because it had surpassed the unrestrained sword heart. At this moment, Gehenna King knew that he'd actually underestimated Xianxia when he said he didn't underestimate Xianxia. He should have taken this young man seriously. Gehenna King didn't think too much about it and suddenly roared furiously. Myriad Een converge. At this moment he chose to defend, and he could only defend because he'd lost the initiative to attack. As soon as he finished speaking, boundless Een souls suddenly appeared around Gehenna King, and countless Een souls protected him. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian's sword arrived. This attack could be said to be Zhou Xian's strongest attack until now because he'd utilized the God Seal to temporarily improve his cultivation to the Tao-proving realm. His sword descended. Bang! Countless Een souls let out shrill cries as a destructive force suddenly erupted. Even though Zhou Xian's attack had annihilated countless Een souls, it hadn't been able to destroy Gehenna King's Een converge. Gehenna King gazed at Zhou Xian and revealed a savage smile. This is the nether dimension. You can't destroy my Een converge. Now it's time for you to die. As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack. However, the execution heaven sword in Zhou Xian's hand suddenly transformed into the soul-suppressing sword. At the instant that the soul-suppressing sword appeared, the Een souls around Gehenna King were completely absorbed. At this moment, Gehenna King's expression changed drastically. How could this be possible? In the next moment, the soul-suppressing sword stabbed into Gehenna King's head. Bang! In an instant, the Een souls around Gehenna King were completely absorbed by the soul-suppressing sword. However, the soul-suppressing sword didn't absorb Gehenna King. Everyone in the surroundings was dumbstruck. Gehenna King lost? How was this possible? Not far away, Wuxia glanced at Zhou Xian and said softly, "This guy is too calculative." In fact, if Zhou Xian had taken out the soul-suppressing sword from the beginning, Gehenna King would have been prepared. However, Zhou Xian didn't. Zhou Xian used the Execution Heaven Sword, and when the Execution Heaven Sword failed to destroy the Een converge, everyone thought that Gehenna King was going to counterattack. At that time, even Wuxia thought that Zhou Xian was finished. Once he caught Gehenna King off guard and failed to win, he would be counterattacked. However, no one expected that Zhou Xian would take out the soul-suppressing sword at this time. The moment he took out the soul-suppressing sword happened to be when Gehenna King was the most relaxed. At this time, Zhou Xian won with one strike. The soul-suppressing sword was suppressed inside Gehenna King's body. At this moment, Gehenna King didn't dare to move at all. If he moved, he would die. Not far away, Zhou Xian took a deep breath. At this moment, he was very tired. That strike just now seemed to have drained all his strength. He knew very well that he only had one chance to strike. If he couldn't win with one strike, Gehenna King would counterattack. At that time, it would be very difficult for him to win unless Gehenna King made a huge mistake. Fortunately, Gehenna King didn't take him seriously. Zhou Xian retracted his thoughts and put away the 2 God seals. It had to be said that the power of these 2 God seals was very tempting, but he still knew very well what he wanted. This kind of Tao validation was not true Tao validation. He wanted to rely on himself to achieve true Tao validation. Zhou Xian looked at Gehenna King, who was not far away, and said with a smile, "Gehenna King, the road to the underworld is not easy. Please send us on our way." Gehenna King narrowed his eyes. "You want to take me hostage?" Zhou Xian nodded. "Yes. Do you have a problem with that?" Gehenna King sneered. At this moment, the soul-suppressing sword suddenly trembled violently. In an instant, Gehenna King's expression changed greatly because he discovered that the sword was devouring his soul. Zhou Xian looked at Gehenna King. "If you want to die, you can kill yourself now. This way I can't take you hostage. Kill yourself." Gehenna King stared at Zhou Xian without saying a word. Zhou Xian smiled. "It seems that you don't want to die. Then let's go." After saying that, he looked at Wuxia. "Brother, let's go." Wuxia hesitated for a moment and then followed Zhou Xian. If he didn't follow Yi Xian, he really wouldn't be able to leave the underworld. At this moment, the underworld experts blocked in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. What, you don't care about Gehenna King's life? Inmu Chun, who was the leader, glanced coldly at Yi Xian and then looked at Gehenna King. Gehenna King was silent. Inmu Chun fell silent as well when he saw this. He understood what Gehenna King meant. Yi Xian roared with laughter and then he left with Gehenna King and Wuxia. As for Inmu Chun and the others, they didn't leave and followed closely behind. It didn't take long for Yi Xian's group of 3 to arrive at the Bridge of Helplessness. Yi Xian took a deep breath because he was about to leave the underworld. But right at this moment, the Bridge of Helplessness suddenly trembled. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What's going on in the underworld? Yi Xian looked at Gehenna King, and Gehenna King frowned as well while a trace of bewilderment appeared in his eyes. It wasn't just Gehenna King, even the other underworld experts were slightly bewildered because they hadn't made a move. After all, Gehenna King's status in the underworld played a decisive role, so they didn't dare sacrifice him. It should be said that besides the Lord of Gehenna, no one dared to sacrifice Gehenna King. Right at this moment, Wuxia, who was by Yi Xian's side, suddenly said, "Something isn't right. An expert is traversing through space and rushing over." Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly. From the underworld? Wuxia shook his head. I don't know. Yi Xian was just about to speak when the space in front of him suddenly split apart, and then a woman walked out from within it. When they saw this woman, all the experts of the Yin dimension were stunned. In the next moment, all of them hurriedly bowed respectfully. Sixth Princess. Gehenna King bowed slightly as well and his eyes were filled with shock. The sixth princess is the most beloved daughter of the Lord of Doubting. What's she doing here? On the other hand, Yi Xian's face sank. This woman was none other than the woman who'd imprisoned the Permitha flower in the past. She'd actually come here herself. As soon as the sixth princess emerged, her gaze directly descended onto Yi Xian. Her eyes were filled with indifference and it was like a god was looking at a mortal. Wuxia spoke in a low voice by Yi Xian's side. She wouldn't have come to look for trouble with you, right? Yi Xian smiled. What do you think? Wuxia's expression turned unsightly. The sixth princess suddenly walked towards Yi Xian. Don't worry. I won't kill you so quickly. I'll take my time. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. He who strikes first gains the advantage. Yi Xian still didn't hold back in this attack, and he immediately used the Samsara seal and the 3 sword domains. The Tao validation realm. The sword spirit. When the sword descended, it could destroy the world. However, Yi Xian's shocking attack was blocked by a ray of white light. The ray of white light forcefully blocked Yi Xian's sword. A wisp of ridicule appeared on the corners of the sixth princess's mouth. Kill me? I was born with a divine body and I've long since surpassed the Tao validation realm. Even Tao breakers can't do anything to me and you think you can? As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand. Bang! Yi Xian's entire body was sent flying. The moment he was sent flying, countless mysterious black thunderbolts frantically bombarded Yi Xian. Under the bombardment of these black thunderbolts, Yi Xian's physical body actually began to crack inch by inch. Beside him, Wuxia's eyes were filled with horror. The legendary Tao domination. Tao domination. What was above the Tao validation? There were 2 realms. One was the Tao breaking realm. Tao breakers were enemies of the Tao and broke the great Tao. The other was the Tao domination. These people could truly control the great Tao after the Tao validation, and such experts were as rare as the legendary Tao breakers. It's over. That was the only thought left in Wuxia's mind. Chapter 1322. As soon as he stopped, Yi Xian hurriedly circulated the energy of Buddhism within him. However, his energy was actually unable to destroy the black lightning. Yi Xian was horrified and he hurriedly activated his sword domain. At the same time, an expanse of formidable sword intent suddenly enveloped his body. Bang! The lightning was slashed into pieces by his sword domain and sword intent. At this moment, his entire body was covered in injuries. What formidable strength! Yi Xian raised his head and gazed at the sixth princess with a solemn expression on his face. He's even stronger than the king of hell. The sixth princess gazed at Yi Xian from afar. He's not that weak. But now this is interesting. As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm and a whip suddenly appeared there. The whip seemed to be condensed from lightning. No, it was condensed from lightning. The sixth princess walked slowly towards Zhou Xian. This is the God-striking whip, and it specializes in striking those with formidable bodies. I hope you'll be able to endure a few more strikes. As she spoke, she was about to attack. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. A strand of sword light flashed through the battlefield. A wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of the sixth princess' mouth. She waved her hand lightly and then a bolt of lightning flashed. Bang! The lightning flickered while the heavens and the earth shook. The bolt of lightning had just come into contact with the ray of light when it was instantly shattered. But right at this moment, Zhou Xian suddenly appeared in front of the sixth princess, and he stabbed his sword towards the center of the sixth princess' forehead. However, the sixth princess didn't dodge at all, and she just allowed Zhou Xian's sword to stab towards her. When Zhou Xian's sword was just half an inch away from the center of the sixth princess' forehead, it was stopped by an invisible force. The sixth princess gazed at Zhou Xian and ridiculed, "Do you know what an innate divine body is? It's because I'm protected by the gods. Not to mention a tiny swordsman like you, even if all the swordsmen in the world converged together, they wouldn't be able to harm me. How can a mortal's sword harm a deity?" With that, she suddenly lashed out with her whip. This time Zhou Xian was already mentally prepared. The moment the sixth princess lashed out with her whip, he had already retreated hundreds of feet. However, as soon as he stopped, the space around him suddenly collapsed. Boom! Zhou Xian retreated several thousand feet, and the space he was originally in had turned into a pool of lightning. At this moment, the sixth princess suddenly waved her hand, and the space in front of Zhou Xian was suddenly torn apart by a black bolt of lightning. Zhou Xian's pupils constricted and he slashed down with his sword. Boom! A wave of sword radiance and lightning abruptly broke out, while Zhou Xian instantly retreated. While he was retreating, countless bolts of lightning shot towards him like flying swords. Every bolt of lightning contained a power that could destroy heaven and earth. It was obvious that the sixth princess wanted to destroy Zhou Xian's body. After Zhou Xian stopped, he suddenly clenched his fists and then held them horizontally in front of him. Die! A formidable force suddenly erupted in front of Zhou Xian. Rumble! In an instant, the entire hill was transformed into ash. Moreover, the bolts of lightning had vanished. At the same time, the experts of the netherworld in the surroundings were shaken to the point of retreating repeatedly. However, the sixth princess didn't take a single step back, and the force vanished without a trace as soon as it arrived in front of her. The sixth princess gazed at Zhou Xian. In the next moment, she suddenly vanished on the spot. Zhou Xian's pupils constricted and he roared furiously, "Suppress!" Bang! The sword domain suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian. Meanwhile, a bolt of lightning suddenly tore through the sword domain, and Zhou Xian's countenance instantly turned ghastly pale. Meanwhile, the sixth princess was already within Zhou Xian's sword domain. She laughed coldly as she suddenly clenched her right hand tightly. In an instant, countless bolts of lightning condensed in her palm. Zhou Xian was shocked and he hurriedly withdrew his sword domain. He was just about to retreat when the sixth princess appeared in front of him. A wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of her mouth when she noticed the trace of terror in Zhou Xian's eyes. "You finally know about space? Aren't you?" Right at this moment, the sixth princess's voice stopped abruptly, because an illusory Xiaota had suddenly appeared above her. The World Prison Pagoda. Zhou Xian suddenly roared furiously, "Tao laws return!" Bang! The World Prison Pagoda shook violently. In the next moment, 9 beams of energy that could obliterate the heavens and the earth suddenly erupted from within the pagoda and enveloped the sixth princess. The sixth princess' eyes narrowed slightly, and then she suddenly relaxed her palm, causing countless bolts of lightning to shoot into the sky. However, the bolts of lightning weren't able to shatter the energy of the World Prison Pagoda. Above the sixth princess's head, a blood-red prisoner character gradually appeared. A trace of uneasiness arose in the sixth princess' heart, and she was about to attack again. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly clenched his fists and smashed them forward. Die! Dao Scripture Martial Arts. As these 2 punches blasted out, a destructive force erupted from Zhou Xian's fists. However, it was blocked by a white light. However, at this moment the white light gradually became illusory. because he still had the power of the Tao laws of the prison pagoda. Yi Xian roared, "Kill!" As soon as he finished speaking, the sword spirit suddenly flew out from his waist, and then it slashed down in a straight line. The sword slashed at the white light. Boom! The white light instantly shattered. Yi Xian hurriedly took a step forward and punched the sixth princess in the face. Bang! The sixth princess retreated immediately. It wasn't that she didn't want to dodge that punch, but she couldn't, because she noticed that Xiao Ta was suppressing her strength. As she retreated, the world prison pagoda remained above her head. Moreover, the prisoner character above her head was growing redder. God imprisonment. At this moment, the world prison pagoda and the 9 Tao laws had actually forcefully suppressed the sixth princess. Of course, this was an opportunity that the sixth princess had given her. If she hadn't underestimated Yi Xian, she wouldn't have been able to rely on the world prison pagoda at all. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of the sixth princess, and her peerlessly beautiful face suddenly became ferocious. Ant. Yi Xian didn't punch this time, and he slashed his sword at the sixth princess's head instead. Bang! The sixth princess's body suddenly trembled violently, and then it became illusory. However, Yi Xian's hair was turning white at a visible speed. With his current strength, he was actually able to control the world prison pagoda. However, that depended on the person he was dealing with. The sixth princess's strength far exceeded his own. It could be said that he wasn't suffering from the backlash of the world prison pagoda. He was suffering from the sixth princess's strength. I must kill this woman. A trace of ghastly killing intent flashed through Yi Xian's eyes, and then he suddenly slashed his sword at the sixth princess once more. At the instant he swung his sword, even his body became slightly illusory. Just as the sword was about to strike the sixth princess' head, a powerful force suddenly flashed across the battlefield. In the next moment, a black chess piece suddenly struck Yi Xian's sword. Bang! In an instant, Yi Xian was blasted flying along with his sword. At the same time, the energy of the 9 Tao laws that imprisoned the sixth princess had vanished into thin air, and the world prison pagoda had been heavily damaged. The sixth princess had returned to normal. Not far away, Wu Exin turned his head to look and saw a middle-aged man slowly walking over from a few hundred feet to his right. The middle-aged man wore a black robe, and on his robe, there was a picture of a malevolent ghost, and in his hand there was a horsetail whisk. The Netherworld Emperor. The leader of the ghost emperors of the 10 directions. Behind the Netherworld Emperor were 9 other people, and these 9 people were the other ghost emperors of the 9 directions. At the side, Wuxia was silent. At least 70 to 80% of the experts of the underworld had arrived. This time it's really over. Wuxia sighed softly and he glanced at Yi Xian in the distance. In the beginning he had hated Yi Xian a little, but now, this fellow's fate would probably be even worse than his. After all, the doubting sixth princess's hatred for Yi Xian was not ordinary. In the distance, Yi Xian took a deep breath. This time not only had his hair turned white, but even his face had aged. Yi Xian was somewhat unwilling. He was so close just now. Just a little bit more and he could have killed that woman. Damn, this underworld is playing gang fights. At this time, Wuxia suddenly walked to Yi Xian's side and he looked at Yi Xian. You're called Yi Xian? Yi Xian looked at Wuxia and grinned. Sorry, I got you into trouble too. Wuxia shook his head. Forget it. I think this is fate. Once I also thought that I could control my own fate. But now it seems that I didn't. Otherwise, why didn't I predict that I would encounter a scammer like you? Yi Xian. Wuxia also lay down beside Yi Xian. I also gave up resisting. 37 Tao confirming experts. I don't want to fight and I can't beat them. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I may die a little easier, but it's different for you. This underworld isn't an ordinary place when it comes to torturing people. It's definitely the best in the universe. You must be mentally prepared. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Are you gloating? Wuxia laughed. To be honest, I'm still a little angry. You really made me suffer too much. Yi Xian. At this moment, the sixth princess suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. She looked down at Yi Xian and was about to speak, but Yi Xian suddenly leaped up, and under everyone's astonished gazes, Yi Xian directly hugged the sixth princess, and then suddenly stabbed the sixth princess from the back. This sword he didn't hold back and he used all the strength in his body. The sword pierced through the sixth princess's body and also through his body. Everyone in the field was shocked. At this moment the sixth princess punched Zhou Xian's chest. Zhou Xian spat out a mouthful of blood and his entire body was blasted flying. At the side Wuxia blinked and then said, "This brother is a ruthless person. Should I resist a little as well?" In the distance the sixth princess suddenly roared furiously, "Damned ant, I'm going to skin you and extract your soul. I'm going to make you suffer for eternity." At this moment, the entire underworld could hear the sixth princess roar. On the ground Zhou Xian took a deep breath and smiled bitterly. He still wasn't able to kill that woman. That woman's physique wasn't simple, but she didn't feel good either because he noticed that something was quickly flowing out of her body. In a certain hall, Xidagarba put his palms together and sighed softly. He didn't choose to attack. He had anticipated this outcome when Zhou Xian saved the equinox flower. Therefore he chose to call it quits with Zhou Xian. They did not owe each other anything. On the other side, Ain shook his head in silence. He didn't choose to attack either. Attacking meant being stained with karma and also offending the doubting sixth princess. Offending the doubting sixth princess for a mere Zhou Xian? It wasn't worth it. In the fifth dimension somewhere in the starry sky, Moon Yanyan sat in the middle of the starry sky thinking about something. At this time Yi Jiming appeared beside Moon Yanyan and said anxiously, "He's in the underworld." Moon Yanyan looked at Yi Jiming but didn't say anything. Seeing Moon Yanyan's indifference, Yi Jiming said angrily, "He's in the underworld in danger." Moon Yanyan shook his head and smiled. "I've taught him so much but he's still as childish as a child. Greed, overestimating himself. I told him that even I don't want to provoke the underworld, but he still went for that Tao scripture. I told him to act according to his capabilities, but what did he do? He ignored my words and went to the underworld for that Tao scripture. This isn't just stupid, it's also ignorant and childish. Even if I save him today he'll still be this stupid and childish in the future. Fine, I'll just treat it as Moon Yanyan misjudged him." After saying that she stood up and left, her eyes filled with undisguised disappointment. Chapter 1323. He's not after the Tao scripture. Yi Jiming's voice sounded from behind Moon Yanyan. Moon Yanyan stopped and turned to look at Yi Jiming. Yi Jiming opened her palm, revealing a green bottle. Moon Yanyan frowned. "Yellow Springs holy water?" Yi Jiming looked at Moon Yanyan. "He's not going to the nether for the Tao scripture, but for the Yellow Springs holy water." Moon Yanyan looked at Yi Jiming. "What do you mean?" Yi Jiming walked to Moon Yanyan. "He's doing it for you." Moon Yanyan frowned. "For me?" Yi Jiming looked at Moon Yanyan. "He knows that you're injured. He thinks that there must be something wrong with your soul, so he asked me to bring him to the nether. Do you know how much he sacrificed to get the Yellow Springs holy water?" Moon Yanyan was silent. Yi Jiming hurriedly explained. Gradually Moon Yanyan's right hand clenched tightly, and her cold expression gradually softened. Especially when she heard that Yi Xian had entered the Yellow Springs River in order to get the Yellow Springs holy water, she clenched her right hand. How much pain would his body and soul suffer if he couldn't use his strength to resist the corrosive power of the Yellow Springs holy water? Yi Jiming suddenly said, "He's an idiot. The biggest idiot in the world." Moon Yanyan replied softly, "He is." Yi Jiming glanced at Moon Yanyan. Just as he was about to speak, Moon Yanyan opened her palm and a sword appeared in it. In the next instant she slashed out with her sword. As the sword slashed out, space split apart and a pitch-black spatial crack appeared in front of the two girls. When Yi Jiming saw the spatial crack, his expression changed drastically. This is the path to the underworld. Slashing open the path to the nether. How terrifying was that? Yi Jiming looked at Moon Yanyan as though she was looking at a monster. Her hands were trembling. Just how strong was Moon Yanyan? The Yang world and the Yang world were guarded by the Tao world. Under normal circumstances, if one wanted to go to the Yang world, he had to go to the intersection of the Yang world and the Yang world and enter the Yang world from there. However, there was another way, and that was to cut open the path to the netherworld. How difficult would that be? Not only did he have to split open the Yang realm's universe barrier, he also had to split open the Yang realm's universe barrier. Most importantly, he had to be able to break the power of the Tao realm. In the instant that Mu Nianyan cleaved open the path to the underworld, Mu Xing suddenly looked up into the sky from a faraway wasteland. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Who is it? The underworld. Xian lay on the ground. At this moment he had no strength at all. In the distance, the sixth princess was staring at Xian with hatred. She did not expect that she would be injured by a mortal. Or rather, she was almost killed by a mortal. This was undoubtedly an extraordinary humiliation to her. The sixth princess stared at Xian. I will let your soul suffer all the torture in the world of the underworld. Damn it. At this moment, Xian suddenly sat up on the ground and looked at Wuxia. Brother, help me up. I can still fight. Everyone was speechless. Wuxia hesitated for a moment and then said, Brother, you really have guts. As he said that, he helped Xian up. Xian took a deep breath. At the moment he could not even stand steadily. Wuxia helped Xian. He hesitated for a moment and then said, Brother, do you really want to fight? Xian nodded and grinned. How can I, a swordsman, sit and wait for death? Even if I die, I will fight to the death. Wuxia looked at Xian and gave him a thumbs up. You really have guts. I won't wait to die either. Even if I die, I will drag someone down with me. Xian laughed and then said, Brother, step aside. I'm going to use my ultimate move. Wuxia nodded quickly. Hey brother, be careful. I will cheer you on from the side. If you die, I will immediately come to accompany you. I won't be able to live today anyway. As for the debt of you tricking me, I will settle it with you in my next life. As he said that, he retreated to the side. Xian looked at the sixth princess in the distance and smiled sinisterly. Didn't you want to torture me? I am here now. Come over. The sixth princess smiled coldly. I like people with tough bones like you. This kind of torture is more interesting. As she said that, she opened her palm. In an instant, a bolt of lightning condensed. The next moment, this bolt of lightning swept towards Xian with a destructive force. Everywhere the lightning passed, the space exploded inch by inch. It was incomparably terrifying. In the field, everyone was looking at Xian. How would Xian resist this force now? Xian suddenly roared with laughter, and it was an extremely mad laughter. You can't survive if you don't go mad. Bring it on. Amidst Xian's loud laughter, his head of white hair gradually turned blood red. When that bolt of lightning arrived in front of him, his eyes had already turned into a sea of blood. The energy of his bloodline. At this moment, an extremely terrifying, killing intent and vicious energy suffused the surroundings. Xian stabbed with his sword. The sword was a sword spirit and it was a gorgeous red. As soon as he stabbed with his sword, the bolt of lightning was instantly blasted apart. After all, he was at the Tao validation realm right now. Coupled with the energy of his bloodline, how terrifying was this attack? Everyone present was stunned when they saw Xian shatter that bolt of lightning with a single strike of his sword. This fellow actually still has combat strength? Wuxia was quite shocked as well. This brother is really ferocious. The sixth princess stared fixedly at Xian from afar. An ant like you actually has such a bloodline? However, it's a waste to use it on you. I'll drain all your blood later. I presume it should be very nourishing. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly vanished on the spot. The space in front of Xian was suddenly torn apart by a bolt of lightning. In the next moment, countless bolts of lightning suddenly appeared around Xian, and they were like a net that enveloped down towards Xian. Xian took a step forward and slashed down with his sword. A sea of blood surged into the sky as he slashed with his sword. Bang! In an instant, the entire nether dimension trembled. Countless bolts of lightning and blood-red sword energy exploded madly in the surroundings, and strands of formidable force surged towards the surroundings like waves. At this moment, the entire nether dimension shook. Countless evil spirits looked towards the hill with astonishment in their eyes. A woman suddenly appeared on the other side of the hill. It was Ain. Ain looked at Xian, who had activated the bloodline power in the distance, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. What a powerful bloodline power. Who the hell is this guy? Nanzong also appeared at the side. He also looked at Xian with a trace of astonishment in his eyes. Xian's strength was not weak, but it was not enough to impress him. What shocked him was Xian's bloodline. This bloodline power was not simple at all. On the other side, the great Netherworld Emperor also frowned slightly. He looked at Gehenna Monarch, who he had just rescued, and asked, "Do you recognize this bloodline?" Gehenna Monarch shook his head. "I've never seen it before. It's not recorded in the history books." The great Netherworld Emperor said softly, "This person is not simple." Gehenna Monarch was expressionless. No matter how not simple, he must die today. The great Netherworld Emperor nodded. He could have offended anyone, but he had to offend the doubting sixth princess. After all, the sixth princess was born with a divine body. Since birth, she had been doted on by countless people, and her status was extremely noble. Although she was a little willful, she had the right to be willful. Zhou Xian had dug his own grave by saving the red spider lilies. In the distance, Zhou Xian was still fighting with the sixth princess. At this moment, Zhou Xian had completely entered a state of madness. He did not want to lose his mind completely, but if he did not do so, he would not be able to fight. He had caught this woman off guard the previous 2 times, but this time, no matter how stupid she was, she would not underestimate him again. Therefore, he could only choose to enter a state of madness. When he chose to enter a state of madness, he no longer cared about anything else. Die in battle. This was the last thought he had after entering a state of madness. As the fight went on, the sixth princess's face became a little ugly. Although she was suppressing Zhou Xian, she could not kill him. In fact, she was also a little shocked. Although Zhou Xian was only 1 level lower than her, the difference between the Tao-proving realm and the Tao-controlling realm was like heaven and earth. The previous 2 times were because she had been careless, so she suffered a loss. But now she wasn't careless in the slightest. However, she was unable to kill Zhou Xian. Moreover, Zhou Xian was actually becoming more and more courageous as the battle progressed. Moreover, Zhou Xian's sword was very strange and ever-changing, and it contained some sort of grand Tao. She did not dare underestimate this sword in the slightest because this sword could kill her. After around 15 minutes, Zhou Xian was no longer suppressed, and the 2 of them were evenly matched. The expressions of the experts from the netherworld in the distance became solemn when they witnessed this scene. They noticed that they'd severely underestimated this fellow from the Yang realm. Even Wang Chong of Hell had a solemn expression. In the beginning, he thought that he had been suppressed by Zhou Xian because of his carelessness. But now it would seem like besides his carelessness, Zhou Xian was very strong as well. To a certain extent, Zhou Xian was on the same level as them. Suddenly, the sixth princess was blasted 50 kilometers away by Zhou Xian's sword. After she stopped, she suddenly turned around to look at the Netherworld Emperor and the others. Attack! Wang Chong and the others were slightly stunned when they heard the sixth princess. In the next moment, he and the Netherworld Emperor vanished on the spot. Wu Exin flew into a rage when he saw this. "What the fuck? You're so fucking shameless. I'll fight you to the death." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. However, as soon as he attacked, several experts from the Netherworld obstructed his path. Wu Exin roared furiously, "Don't be so shameless. Netherworld, don't be so shameless." In the distance, bang! An expanse of blood suddenly exploded. In the next moment, Zhou Xian was blasted flying. As the Netherworld Emperor and the others attacked, Zhou Xian was immediately defeated. Beating up the sixth princess was his limit. Zhou Xian fell to the ground. His body split open and blood splattered all over his body. At this moment, the sixth princess suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian. She looked at Zhou Xian and sneered. "Come, let me drain your blood first. Then I'll place your soul in the 9 underworlds and let it burn forever." As soon as she finished speaking, she placed her right hand on Zhou Xian's chest. In an instant, all the blood in Zhou Xian's body trembled and then left his body. Not far away, Ain turned to look at Nanzang. Nanzang put his palms together and remained silent. Ain also remained silent. If the 2 of them didn't attack, then Zhou Xian's life would end here. At this moment, the space in the distance suddenly split open. In the next moment, a woman holding a long sword slowly walked out. Moon Yanyan. When Moon Yanyan saw Zhou Xian's miserable state, she was slightly stunned. In the next moment, she disappeared on the spot. In the distance, the sixth princess's expression changed drastically. She was just about to resist when a sword suddenly pierced her chest and pushed her back 3,000 miles. Everyone present was horrified. Moon Yanyan walked to Yi Xian and squatted down. She used her right hand to gently wipe away the blood that flowed from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. She smiled. Don't be afraid. Sister Nian is here. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.